just in time and changed our lonely lives that lovely day. Changed our lonely lives that lovely
stood and talked like this before. We looked at each other in the same way then, but I can't remember where or when. The clothes you're wearing are the clothes you wore. The smile you were smiling then, but I can't remember where or when. Some things that happen for the first time seem to be happening again. And so it seems that we have met before and laughed before and loved before, but who knows where or when. Some things that happen for the first time seem to be happening again. And so it seems that we have met before and laughed before and loved before, but who knows where or when.
It's the wrong time and the wrong place, though your face is charming. It's the wrong face, it's not his face, but such a charming face that it's alright with me. It's the wrong song in the wrong style, though your smile is lovely. It's the wrong smile, it's not his smile, but a very nice smile, so it's alright with me. You can't know how happy I am that we met. I'm strangely attracted to you. There's someone I'm trying very hard to forget. Don't you wanna forget someone too? It's the wrong game with the wrong chips, though your lips are tempting. They're the wrong lips because they're not his lips, but very, very tempting lips. So if some night you're free, dear, it's alright. It's alright. Don't you know it's alright with me? It's the wrong game with lips are tempting, they're the wrong lips. Ah, they're not his lips, but tempting lips. So if some night you're free, it's alright. It's alright. It's alright with me.
They like to chat about the dresses they will wear tonight. They chew the fat about their dresses and the neighbors fight. Inconsequential things that men don't really care to know become essential things that women find so apropos.
15 Single-Family Design Board meeting to order. Anyone in the audience wishing to address any item not on today's agenda can come forward. Seeing no one come forward, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for approval of the minutes of September 21st, 2015. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, let's go through each item. Item number 2, 324 Sherman Road. Any corrections, additions? Item number 3, 1542 Cliff Drive. Any items or corrections? Item number 4, 1535 La Cornelia Drive. Any items or corrections? Item number 5, 969 Esalito Avenue. Item number 6, 941 Medio Road. Item number 7, 920 Mission Ridge Road. Hearing no corrections or additions, the chair will call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Let's go back to approval of the consent item for October 1st. Did we have a October 1st?
No, we did not have a consent meeting last week.
That was the one that was postponed or canceled. Okay. Then let's go to this morning's consent item for October 5th, 2015.
Okay, consent calendar minutes for Monday, October 5th is as follows. Item A, 20 Camino Verde. This project received approval of the review after final as submitted. Item B, 350 Mountain Drive. This project received final approval as submitted. Item C, 1208 Bajada Drive. This project received project design approval with the NPO findings and final approval. Item D, 928 El Rancho Road. This project received project design approval with the NPO findings and is continued 1 week to consent. Item E, 1290 Mountain View Road. This project received project design approval with the NPO findings and is continued indefinitely to consent. Items A through E were reviewed by board members James and Miller.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I haven't seen anything about item E. I wonder if one of the board members who was there could just give us a real quick rundown, because I was just a little bit concerned about the amount of grading, but so it went straight to consent. So Miller and James.
You recall, was this an item that we had looked at as a whole board? And went to
No, I
consent?
think the grading was primarily concerned about the tier 3 SWIMP requirements because they dug in a bunch of cisterns. She's got this very complicated system of having the water going into a gutter system, down into a drain system. It's very complicated.
She's got a couple of different cisterns buried in different places.
Yeah.
Rain barrels, very complicated, sophisticated.
Well-studied Tier 3.
So I'd have to say those the grading is mostly concerned to that. It's not more of a massive amount of change in the topography of the area around the house.
And as far as plate heights of the house, she's not raising or lowering the grade to change plate heights or anything.
So in your opinion, it's just fine to go right through to consent? It doesn't have any
It's
impacts?
a very nondescript 70s era Spanish house, and she's cleaning it up. The look of it's a lot cleaner, more consistent.
It's a hodgepodge 70s thing right now.
I will, based on your comment, I will take closer scrutiny with regards to the cubic yards and cut and fill, because what I saw didn't reflect hardly anything as far as actual changing of the topography of the surrounding. It must have to do more with all the digging of the cisterns and changing the topography for that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, any further discussion? Chair would entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Chair will call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So carried. So no abstentions. Let's go to announcements. Mr. Ng?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Member Woolery will be here at today's meeting, but she'll be running a little behind schedule. I also want to mention that item number 2, 1802 Hillside Road, that is postponed and will not be heard today. And also...
The applicant is here.
Oh, I'm...
But I just came to view it. I didn't know if the contractor was doing it.
Oh, I was speaking with the contractor. Well, if you wish, we can still review it on a conceptual level. It's up to you.
No, it's fine. I'll just call it. I was just curious how these things work.
You just want to visit us.
You might want to wait a second, because I'm going to explain to some of the other folks how this actually works. Because we have a couple items where we're going to have a lot of folks that want to talk to us. If you have a minute, you might want to wait.
And also item number 5, this is 406 North Ontario Road. This project has been postponed at the applicant's request. It was previously noticed for review today.
Okay. Is that postponed indefinitely or just 2 weeks?
That will be, the applicant has indicated coming back, that they would like to come back in 2 weeks.
Okay. Right. Anything else?
No, that's all.
Okay. I had some of us, I believe all of us, received this notice about the joint meeting of the Planning Commission this coming Thursday. I will not, normally I would attend, but I will not be here. I was hoping that certainly one of us from the subcommittee.
I was planning on being there.
Will you be there? You'll take some notes? Okay. That would be good. If you looked at the staff report at all, and I just briefly scanned it, there is some discussion about having a public workshop on the zoning changes sometime in October, but there was no definitive, at least in the report, there's no definitive date. So it probably would be very helpful if you could quiz them and say, do you have a date? What's going on?
Yes.
If you have the opportunity, I think one of the things the subcommittee has been concerned about in a very general way is that the zoning modifications, or excuse me, not modification, but the zoning changes to the new zoning code, at least the subcommittee would hope that they begin to address some of the geographic differences within the city based on 3 dimensions of things we see here on this board that have to be executed in 3 dimensions based on a 2-dimensional zoning code. And one of the examples I can think of that we've looked at is we had a home here just recently where it's on a curve on the Riviera, And because of the two-dimensional zoning plan, they have a 30-foot setback all the way around the house,
Right.
which virtually eliminates any place to build a house. And we had several houses some time ago, particularly up on the Riviera, and I forgot the name of the street, where virtually every house on the street is non-conforming, and virtually half of each house sits in the setback, because when they did the two-dimensional zoning, I don't know that they ever thought about the fact that we've got a hillside. We've got geography to deal with.
There is a clause in the zoning, isn't it? If you're a certain slope in the front yard, you get a setback.
You get a little relief, but most of what we've been seeing, these folks of having to pay for modifications in front of the hearing officer. And each one of those, I think, costs to the tune of $800 plus, all the other stuff. So that's a concern. Anyway, if you get a chance, unless somebody disagrees, at least bring it to their attention.
Sure, that's good.
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
are they going to be talking about zoning information reports also?
If you read that staff report, they're covering a whole bunch of things. They're covering vacation rentals, the ZIR thing, which doesn't quite affect us as much as a board. Certainly the redo of the zoning code, that's a big effect on us. And then there were 2 or 3 other major planning issues, all coming to that joint meeting on Thursday.
So we have 2 members who were going to go.
I was going, yeah.
And
All right.
Joe said he was.
Because it said on there that you were inviting the board, just one person from the board, which was you, so.
But since I won't be here and he's the vice chair.
I'm the vice
The
chair,
vice
yeah.
chair, so officially, yeah, that's good.
But I mean, it's open to the public, so
Yeah.
any one of us can.
It said
More the merrier.
chairs and it ended with an S.
Oh, chairs, okay.
Okay. All right, any other announcements, issues? Okay, let's go to the first item, and, they're here. So while they're coming up, I'm going to explain to a little bit to some of you folks that are, I know, here for other items. We just had item number 2 postponed, which means we're going to have to take a recess because all of these items that are publicly noticed have to happen within 15 minutes of the time period noticed. And then when we do come back, this is how it kind of works. We don't see these projects, particularly if they're brand new projects, we don't see anything until they land on this desk in front of us today. So we will not have seen any of these projects. Now this project, the first one we're seeing, we've actually seen already. It's coming back, I think, for a second time. But if it's a new project, we've never seen them. Now some of us will go out and look at the project site, but we don't have the opportunity to see these drawings ahead of time. So part of our challenge here is to be able to absorb this information today, listen to the public on their comments, and then try to make a determination of which direction we think we should ask the applicant to go. So the way that works is they'll come up, the applicant will come up, the designer or the owner or both will present to us what they plan to do. Before it comes for us for questions and comments, we will look to staff for any report. We will read into the record notification of any letters we may have received, and then we'll also open it for public comment. If you wish to speak to the item, you should fill out one of those little yellow slips that are over here on the side table and hand it to staff so that I have some way to ask people to come forward. We'll take that information. Generally, we won't get into a dialogue with you, but we'll certainly take the information, and then it's closed to public at that point. Public comment is finished. We'll bring it back to the board for questions from board members to the applicant and the designer. And then we'll go to comments, and generally at comments, we're looking for some sort of motion or direction for the applicant. In general, these projects go through at least one review, what we call concept review. Concept review is actually when we do grant concept review, and we don't always do that the first time. That will be an action which is appealable, and it's appealable directly to the city council. If there is no appeal, then the applicant can come back to us for final approval, and generally that takes some time between concept and final because they have to prepare final drawings. That's an action we look at. If we determine that it indeed resembles a complete set of drawings, we may in fact then give it final approval. That action is appealable to the City Council. Okay? So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to come and ask one of the staff if you're confused about how the process works. So having done that, we'll go to your item, and if you could share with us how you... This is a public meeting. If you could go to the staff and pose your question, and then we'll take it when we get to it, please. Thank you. Could you read our last action, please?
All right. From our last meeting, provide a landscape plan, address the concerns regarding the modifications. Number 3, reduce the roof deck and study the surrounding overhangs. Number 4, study an alternative to the glass railings. Number 5, provide sections of the southeast and southwest elevations. Number 6, study an alternative to the glass garage doors. Number 7, provide correct drawings on the plans. Number 8, provide a lighting plan specifically around the deck. Number 9, study the trellis detail. Number show the roof ventilation and the location of the gutters and downspouts. Number 11, the board recommends a shingle roof as proposed. Action taken by Motisha, followed by Miller. The action was carried unanimously.
Thank you. So, if you could introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Dawn Sherry, the architect, and this is Kate Dole, the landscape architect.
Welcome. If you could share with us how you address those comments.
Yeah, we're not going to go for a modification. No, it doesn't make any sense for this project. We still want to go in a contemporary kind of direction with this house, but because of the lack of support for the deck being stacked onto the exterior wall, we, by the way, understand why that was not supportable, because that particular stacking wall didn't really go with the fact that we were keeping the sloped roof. So as soon as you keep the sloped roof, it kind of makes sense to go back to just bringing the deck back away from the setbacks and keeping sloped roofs, doing an asphalt roof. And this is all being driven by the fact that they just can't afford the flat roof. If they could, we would be able to go in that direction, but we can't. So we confirmed with staff that the removal and replacement of the chimney outside the setback, the chimney right now is in the setback, but removal of that will not trigger a mod. So in light of that, we are recessing the deck to meet the setbacks and providing a sloped roof around that will continue up, and kind of the deck will nestle down into, I'll show you on the elevations, it'll kind of nestle down into the roof. And then there will be a wall up to the 42-inch height railing. So just starting from the first floor, the one change that we did make was we decided that because we have this open plan and a bar kind of seating area around the outside of the kitchen, that we wanted to be able to seat a big table out here. So the rear trellis got extended slightly, but I don't think there's going to be an issue with that. I just wanted to inform you of that. In addition to that, the materiality changed from wood to metal. And we're still refining the details of that, but it's going to be more of a contemporary metal trellis with probably a retractable canvas awning for sun. But it is on the north side, so we don't expect to use that a whole bunch. This, what used to be doors, is now going to be a big picture window that we're still trying to figure out the proportions of. But about the comments, the other comments, we'll go to the elevations. And these are existing. And I guess I'll just start with kind of showing you, just so everybody kind of has a visual of where this house, where we want to take this house. And we want to go for a very clean exterior plaster finish. We'll go with a dark charcoal gray asphalt composition shingle roof. We'll do low profile roof vents and ridge vents. The exterior lighting will be very minimal minimal everything in the doors and windows being a bronze anodized finish with the lighter plaster, just a very clean look. So I just wanted to show you that so that you can kind of keep that in your head as you're going through this. The window that I was talking about that used to be a door on the back side of the house is, this is not the revised.
Here's the revised.
What? That's not, family intermediate housing. I just saw this on the computer and, oh, maybe, you know what? The client decided to change this door to a big picture window after we had submitted. Okay. But I wrote down to just this guy. I didn't think it would matter to you whether it was a door or window. It's in the backyard. So this configuration will change to this window. It'll be probably a big picture window with two operable.
Instead of what?
Instead of a sliding door system, because they want to be able to put a desk in there. So I did bring that up I did write that down to bring up with you. And we, if you'll notice, we also replaced when we set back the deck, we are now showing, and it's upside down to me now, where's the front? The railing is now going all the way up, and we've eliminated, for the purposes of just moving forward, the small portion of the glass railing that was around the top. However, just in an effort to move forward. However, when you're sitting down on this roof deck and you have a 42-inch railing in front of you, you can't see anything around you. So they would have to get a high table and high chairs to get just a foot above. And I just got a minor glass railing, seamless glass, that rests in a channel approved by the board, and it looks fabulous on a house like this. And I'm trying to figure out what I can do for a foot something else that would be appropriate besides a glass railing, because when you start to say, oh, just put a little piece of plaster, then you also don't get any views. And the roof, because the roof comes up, to me, just that one little portion of glass over the plaster would be a really great solution, in my opinion. Now, I'd like the board to weigh in on that, because I know there was at least one person that opposed that. But I just want to clarify, I'm not asking for the entire railing to be in glass. So that's one issue that I'd just like the board's kind of weigh in on that. What were the other issues on the minutes?
Okay,
and then we'll let Kate present her landscape plan.
We talked about the deck and the steady the overhang around the roof, glass railing, provides sections of the southeast and southwest elevations.
And that didn't make it onto my list of things to do. I had even more things than you had, but I did not write down sections.
Steady an alternative to the glass garage doors.
Yeah, and the owners feel still really strongly that this is the right look for this house. And so I brought a picture in of this whole look. So I want the board's opinion on that issue as well.
And it doesn't face the street, it faces.
We understand that.
Okay. Yeah.
Provide the correct drawings on the plans. I'm not sure what that was.
I think it was the fact that on one drawing I showed the roof coming around the front of the garage, and the other one it didn't. Now it wraps around.
Did you indeed correct it?
Yeah, because now the roof wraps around the deck and the front of the garage.
That's right.
Yeah.
Provide a lighting plan specifically around the deck.
We don't have any lights that will be mounted anywhere. They'll be in the vertical wall.
Any lights here or on this deck?
There'll be these, just the minimal one that we are required outside the door, and it's that one there.
Yeah, let's put it on the camera.
This door.
Okay, so if I translate that to the elevation, I'm going to see a light fixture right here, or right there, or there.
You won't see it from the front of the house, probably.
Trellis detail. You've now gone to a steel trellis. So
yeah, we just want to, and we're still in construction documents, we'll be refining it,
What is that?
but we want to go with, we want to just take a little
That's right here
different approach.
There,
Yeah,
and-
with a very simple
and there, okay?
tubular steel trellis,
Okay.
no detail on the ends, and then with the retractable awning in between somehow. That we're,
Okay, and then you have, you showed us a picture a moment ago of roof ventilation using, using the eave vents.
I don't know what happened to that.
I don't know where that little thing, and then also locations, of gutters and downspouts, and you have.
They're on those are added to the elevations.
On the drawings. And then the shingle roof you've decided to go with. So those were the comments.
And then Kate Dole has her landscape
Oh,
plan.
here.
Oh, there it is.
In front of you. So you're going to have venting, ridge vent here.
Which is typical that we provide for the comp shingle.
Okay, so there's an existing street tree out here, a nice healthy jacaranda. And this is an oak woodland facing down the slope. This is their main view. One of the things that we're looking for is to create screening from the street of the house. And so I'm suggesting another tree. The clients really like olive trees, so I thought that would help soften the two-story elevation. And then we're proposing a hedge of silver sheen pittosporum, which is a fairly light hedge, but also very attractive, which will also add some screening for the house. There's some existing palms here now that are have outlived their usefulness, and we're suggesting to remove those. There are some existing palms here we'd like to retain. I'm adding more of the pittosporum for screening along this side of the house as well, and then just sprucing up the front of the house with more plantings and potted plants. In the back here, we're adding some fruit trees and outdoor patio fire pit, and some additional planting at the top of the slope here. This is existing ice plant. We're just going to ignore it for now. There's a huge gopher problem because of this slope and all of the gopher activity there. And the clients they have young children, and they'd like a nice flat area for them to play, so that they're suggesting a synthetic turf for this area. So that's what I'm showing, and it wraps around like this with a few stepping stones in it. They're interested in very low maintenance as well, so that's one reason we're going with that material. We're suggesting out here a low ground cover, low maintenance with just some blue agaves in the front, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else you need to present? No? Okay. All right, let's bring it back to the board for a moment. Mr. Ng, did we have any communication on this project?
No.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this item? Seeing none, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. This project would like to get project design approval.
I have
Questions? Questions? Anyone? I just want to go back. Oh, Bernie, you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So instead of the glass railing now, what is your proposed material?
Well, we've shown on the drawings that it would just be the plaster. What did we show?
You just bring a
Make
plaster
sure.
wall up.
Yeah, we brought the plaster wall up.
The walls.
Yeah. And it's not what we want. It's what we're showing because
So you're thinking having 6 inches of it.
we just wanted, something like 8 inches or so to be, and then there would be ends that would come within a half an inch of one another. And I think there are sections actually. We did add sections.
I mean, to dovetail what you said, Bernie, do you
Right here.
because you said you've done it before and it's been gorgeous. Do you
Right
have
there.
details to show us?
Right there. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't bring them, but it was approved by the board. I have
Which
had
board? This
single
board?
family design board, and
This board?
throughout the
When?
years too.
Do we know?
Pretty recently, and I think it was actually a staff approval.
Okay, well, that staff approval is different than a
Yeah.
board approval. Because this board, I can't recall we have approved any glass railing, period.
Well,
In the
there-
4 years that I've been on this board.
Yeah, the
And
last
I've been
one
to
that
most all the meetings.
the last one that I got approved by the Single Family Design Board was at 1650 Mira Mesa, and it's on the Mesa.
Well,
And there's more than one
Okay,
on the
well, let's
Mesa.
not get into a discussion. Let's just stick to the questions at this point. Okay? Any other questions? I want to go back to the window for a second. That elevation. So if you don't mind, I'm going to doodle right on here. I think what you described to us was probably a window that looks like something like that. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
that's
talking
what
about?
that's what we're leaning to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these would be awnings or some sliding glass or whatever they would open. Okay. And then on the landscape plan, oops, what right there? On the synthetic turf, is there a kind of synthetic turf that you looked at that kind of looks like real glass?
You know,
grass?
they have made amazing progress with synthetic turf now. It looks exactly like
Yeah.
real turf. And there are different companies that do it. It's a completely different world than it used to be. You just cannot tell.
Okay. And then one last question on the garage. Are there light fixtures on the garage or up in the eave or none?
Probably. Those are the kinds of things that I'll address exactly where they go in the construction document phase. I didn't think
Okay.
that I needed to have a complete lighting plan for preliminary. I apologize.
Okay. Well, that was one of the things we had asked for last time. Okay.
I have
Bernie, you have any
one
more
quick
questions?
question. It
Yes.
just is this currently a door or a window on the side of the garage or what? Currently, and is it going to change?
No, that's the whole garage door. It just has 3 sections in it right now.
You're talking about that right there.
This one?
Yeah, that's that. It's not
Yeah.
changing.
It's not
So,
changing.
so the proposal is a glass door in the front, and then this glass is going to stay on the side. So both sides.
Okay.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? Okay, then let's bring it back to comments, and the applicant is requesting project design approval. So, comments.
Well, I just follow up what I was saying. I'm purely coming from an aesthetic point, not what you've been approved in the past, but I like to see what you've designed. I'm not totally against a glass railing if it aesthetically, works with the house. That's what I'm looking at. So that was my only comment. That's all I have to say at the moment.
Okay, other comments? Is anybody ready to make a motion for, if we have no comments?
Well, I would like to talk about the glass garage door since we asked for an alternative and we don't have one.
Can we go back to can we get that photograph back, please?
Right here.
Oh, right here. That's what they're proposing.
That's what they're proposing, and I understand you're not going to see it from the street, which is helpful, but then with the side and with the glass there and the light at night, it just seems like it might be a little bit overpowering.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, no,
There-
that's why we're here. Comments.
All glass doors are all over that area. Portezuelo, I just drove up there yesterday, and they're just scattered. Sorry, I don't know why the board has such a big objection, especially the ones that are not facing the street.
Also,
Go ahead.
there is a hedge that's right on the property line across from it, so it's not going to disturb the neighbors at all because there's a hedge or screening there. So it's pointing toward the neighbor to the west. So and there's a hedge there, so it's really not going to be bothering anyone.
And I would just quickly follow up on my own is based on the style of the architecture that's existing and what's in the neighborhood. I think what she's doing is fine. It's kind of consistent, and I can see Fred's drawing something. So I'm curious to see what he has to say.
Well, I understand Mr. Motisha's comment about the neighborhood, and yes, I've been up there, and yes, there's a lot of glass garage doors, et cetera. And, but I disagree with the fact that you can't see it. you look at this thing in 3 dimensions. As you drive along the street, you're going to see that garage door in some way. You won't see it straight on because it isn't straight on. But the effect is a lantern with a light on, just like this photograph shows. It's a lantern at night. And I happen to lean towards the more dark sky issue. And so if you all, majority of you, feel it's appropriate, I won't be supporting it because of that. Because I just feel that these garage doors that people are putting in are fighting against the dark sky issue that some of us feel are important about our city. So I'm not going to support a motion that would include approval of the glass garage doors. I also will not support a motion that would approve any kind of glass railing. I think that one can do something like this. This is the sketch of the balcony, and certainly could use cable rails for 12 inches or 10 inches and still allow folks to sit there and at a table and look through. I think that's a way to design it without having to use glass.
Okay, how about
those are my comments.
Aesthetically, I like the looks of the glass door. It doesn't have to have the light come through. We could put...
No, this is shown with obscure glass.
I know, but you could put glass in it and then put a sheet of plywood behind it.
Whatever. That's just my thought. But, you know, guys, there's a 7-member board here. We don't all have to agree. That's
These
just
two,
my position.
as opposed to that, I like that, and I don't like that. I mean, that's my only opinion. But putting glass in the door and then sheeting it behind plywood doesn't allow the light to come through. And if you, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, other comments on any of the other items presented?
It seemed like there would be another kind of way to black it out the light. I mean,
Anyway,
besides
you paint, you...
Where's the color board that you were passing around? Could we see that? Thank you.
I
Well,
do
it's not
have
really the color board, but...
I do have one comment. or
Yes.
Question, comment. Just about the artificial turf. I'm wondering if that was the only possibility for that area. I know it looks great and everything, but I always get a little nervous about how much of it's going to end up in the landfill. But that's just my personal, environmentalist beef.
Fred, are you going to let me respond? Or?
Let's finish with comments, and then you just keep note of that. Any other comments? Okay, before we go to a motion, then I'll go back to the applicant. Yes.
Okay, regarding the synthetic turf, that's my client's wish for that. It's not something that I use very often, except for sometimes for croquet courts or sports courts. But it's something that they really, really want, and that's why it's on the plan.
I've been noticing it a lot. It's going up a lot, going down a lot of places.
Yeah.
And
It looks good.
There's some pretty good looking stuff.
I share your concern.
It wears really good.
Who's putting in a square of it in their backyard. And what it is, it's a drought-driven thing, and that
Right.
they're doing it for now with the intention that when and if we ever get out of drought, then they'll replace it with some lawn again, or some landscaping.
I
But
disagree.
For now, it's actually a really good solution to the drought, to drought. They can look out and see a green sward, and it's not, so stark. And
And if you have a little kid, you need a place for kids to play.
And you do need a place.
So long as it gets recycled and not back in the landfill, because that is the
Yeah,
scary
that is
part
the
about it.
Well, I disagree. I think it's going to stay. I don't think it's going to end up in the landfill.
Well,
There's
I'm
a lot of
hoping
it
should be
around.
recycled. That's what
Well,
I'm
whatever. I mean, it's, depends on what
Make furniture
what
out
the
of it.
weather does to it. What the next owner wants.
I also have another comment regarding the garage doors.
Yes.
I think that it's really important. I mean, I've sat on these review committees. I think it's really important to be consistent. And that the fact that these have been approved all, around town has set a precedence for them to be approved. If you want to start not approving them, you have to be consistent
We are.
across the board.
We have been.
Before you make a motion, Fred, can I make one more comment
Yes.
about the garage doors? You were saying, and you guys were talking about, that they still are going to be seen. Well, they wouldn't be spending this much money on a garage door if they didn't want it to be seen, is one point. So it is going to be seen. From Fred's right, from driving up the street, you are going to see a view of it between the landscaping. There's a lot of glass. There's a lot of garage doors like this in the neighborhood. There's a lot of glass on this house. There's a lot more glass. The whole front of the elevation of the house is glass. These doors are these lights in this garage are going to be on. Not a whole lot. It's not like a garage band's going to be practicing it all night long, and they're going to go in and out of the garage, and the garage door is going to be lit up like that 20 minutes out of the night. But it's the look and feel that looks good, in my opinion. And
Well, I follow up on your comment. I think these conversations are really good because they kind of flesh out how, because it makes me think about it, and I do think about what's there now. And you've got this very dated, tracked 70s house that looks like, taken off from a Trader Vic's restaurant. So I think in lieu of that, I think what you're doing is consistent and compatible with the genre of the neighborhood and this particular house. So, and I understand Fred's concern as well.
Okay, so are we at a point we can come up with a action? Projects here for project design approval. And if you choose to make a motion to give a project design approval, you also need to indicate whether it should go back to the full board for final or the consent calendar for final.
All right, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. I move to give this project design approval with the following comments. You still need to come back for details, right? And
I have to come back for final.
yeah. So we'd like to see a possible alternative railing for the upper deck, either with your glass railing that you talked about or as a cable railing. And I think as a board, we'll reserve the right to choose, which one we think is appropriate. But I do look forward to seeing what you're talking about with the glass railing. The board feels that the house is the consistency and appearance is consistent with the scenic character of the city. The compatibility is appropriate to the site. There has been a comment about the glass garage door, but I believe that the board recommends that there possible alternative to the glass garage door, but that is not unanimously felt. Let's see. And the quality and architecture of the materials is consistent with the natural appearance of the area of the neighborhood. And that's my motion.
Okay. Is there a second to that
I'll
motion?
second that.
Okay. Clarification question.
Yes.
On the garage door, are you approving it with a frosted glass, clear glass? What's your...
Oh, very good. The board recommends frosted glass. Yes.
Okay. So the part of the motion is it frosted glass?
Yes.
Okay. Any other... Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
I made one comment about making plywood on the back of the door, on the inside of the door.
Defeats the purpose of it.
You want the light to shine. You want the light.
Yeah, during the day when you're working in the garage and you're out there, light can come through. You don't have to turn a light on when you go in the garage anymore. There's
That's
a lot
a
of
valid
other
point.
reasons for a frosted glass door. It's really not for seeing it like that all the time.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I guess I would just like to respond since we're having this big discussion on glass garage doors and do they meet compatibility guidelines. And while there are some in that area, very few of them have come before this board. So we are pretty adamant about looking at the character of the neighborhood to see if these things fit. But I know that there are lots of them now in town.
Okay. Any further comments? Hearing no further comments, the chair shall call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay. And let me clarify in your motion.
Yeah.
Back to the full board for final or consent?
I'd like consent. Go back to
Thank
consent.
you, if
Okay.
that's
Is that
possible.
acceptable to the maker of the motion? Let's just vote on that separately since we missed it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Opposed. Abstentions? We have three opposed. 3 opposed to going back to consent for the final, 4 in favor.
Hold on, restate. I think somebody misunderstood probably.
Okay, the motion was to go for final back to consent calendar. If you're opposed to that, are you opposed to that?
I'm opposed.
Okay,
I'm
so
Want to go
there's-
back to the full board?
So you want
I would like to full
So
board.
there's 3 that are opposed going back to consent. There's 4 in favor of going to the full board. So
I'll-
it passes. Okay?
That's great. I'll take it. I'll take the 4.
4 votes allowed to go to consent.
Before Brian
That's
changes
why we
his
have
mind.
7 members on the board.
Yes.
We don't have a tie.
I'm on consent. I'm looking forward to seeing it. So if you'd like to join me, we can.
All right, so it'll go to consent
Thank you,
calendar.
guys.
Okay?
Can I have the 2?
Just so you know, Fred,
Yes.
I'm on the Hollister Ranch Committee, and we do not allow those on the ranch, those goshawks.
Yeah. well,
For the
there you
very
go.
reason you mentioned.
Absolutely.
I bet if we went around.
Oh, the 10 days.
Oh, and this project now has a 10-day appeal period, given the project design approval.
I bet if we went around and
Well, this one has the, I don't know if it makes a difference, the fireplace is out of the setback on the one I handed you.
Right.
Oh, and the one you handed me?
Yeah.
Okay, that's this one.
No, but it,
Okay, our next item has been postponed, item number 2. As we stated at the beginning of the meeting, our next item is scheduled for 4:05. Mr. Ng, can we proceed, or do we have to wait till 4:05?
We can proceed with the next item if you wish.
Okay. Then we're going to go to 626 Alston Road. If the applicant and designer can come forward, please. I'm going to read into the record the project description. This is a proposal to construct a 4,051 square foot, 2-story, single-family residence with an attached 978 square foot, 4-car garage. The project includes a new driveway and 6-foot tall gate with columns, decks and patios, landscaping and walkways. It also proposes a 2,484 cubic yards of cut and fill grading outside of the building footprint and 982 cubic yards under the building footprint, with 18 cubic yards to be exported off the site. Proposed total of 4,936 square feet on a 1.1 acre vacant lot in the Hillside Design District is 99% of the guideline maximum floor to lot area ratio. The staff hearing officer review is required to allow the garage to exceed the maximum allowable size of 750 square feet. This is here for comments only. This is a one-time concept review. Yes.
Yeah, can you explain?
I'm going to ask for an explanation. Mr. Ng, can you explain the concept, what that comment means, please?
Yes. This Single-Family Design Board, we do allow applicants the opportunity for a one-time concept review. It's at a reduced design review. They're not paying the full design review fee. So typically it's for projects where the applicant wants to get a feel or some direction from the board before they proceed with, or before they fully commit to a more fully fleshed out design that they'll move forward with project design approval.
Okay, so at this point, the project that we're about to see has a larger size garage than is allowed, but they haven't made any formal application for a staff hearing officer review, correct?
Two things about that. They have not had a pre-consultation with zoning staff.
Okay.
So with regards to an oversized garage, there's no indication of whether staff would support it. But the applicant has informed me that he has revised the project to no longer require the zoning modification. The garage previously was for 4 cars. It's now for 3 cars. So if the applicant were to proceed with this project, it would not require a zoning modification.
Okay, so this last piece of the sentence is not in play anymore.
No, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. If you could introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, my name is Jose Luis Esparza. I'm the architect.
And Mike Sherman, I represent the owners.
Okay, if you could speak into that microphone, please. This is being recorded and it's on television.
Okay. My name is Mike Sherman, and I represent the owners.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if you could show us what you're doing with this project, please.
Turn it around.
And you can got to turn it to the camera.
You have to read it.
And then you have to look up there.
So this project is located on Alston Road. next to Romero Road. And what we're proposing is currently at 99% FAR. The site is a flag lot. So we've got a driveway opening up to the main part of the site with this existing house, 612 Alston, in front of it. There is a view corridor that starts 28 feet back from this corner of the lot and continues this way, at which we can be at a maximum of 280 elevation. Our current railing is at 278. This is a deck or area where we have a patio down below. The site falls from the street down to a ravine, and we've located the house as far back. It starts at a one-story. At the top floor, we have the three-car garage, which is now 725 square feet net, and we have the master bedroom. And then we have this terrace, and this area is slats to look down on the lower terrace, which is this area. Lower plan, we've got the main living area with 2 bedrooms, stairs here with the lift, elevator, and then on this terrace we've got a reflecting pond. Elevation-wise, it's a Spanish-style architecture to go with the neighborhood.
General feel.
And yeah. So we've got Santa Barbara sandstone, stucco, some wrought iron details, and
wood and terracotta, basically.
Yes, and terracotta roofs, clay pots. So we've got the property terracing down, so we've stepped it down, and we are lifting the lower corner above natural grade to make up the difference. So this actually gets built up. Roof plan. Very, very simple hip roofs and side sections. And we're thinking that this is probably going to be on caissons. If we go back to the site plan.
Second page.
What?
That square window is really different than
Are these sketches?
Yeah.
Well, let's hold off. You save that for questions, please. Let's let him finish.
Okay. Our driveway is 40 feet back from the main entrance, and we've got elevations in the small set here. So that's renderings of what the from the street. Right now you only see trees and shrubbery, and then inside we'll have a combination of stone, gravel, and pavers for the driveway. The gates will be 8 feet tall with wrought iron and sandstone. And again, what the intended feel was so that when you come off the street, you're not crowded, and you feel like you're coming into a country lane, and then you go through the gates, and this right now this is a heavily planted area, and we're going to plant along the property line to create that sense of a country road coming up to the house. The landscaping will be, of course, low water use. Santa Barbara drought tolerant landscape, and of course, one of the main thoughts of the design was to keep maintain the view corridor for this house, which we've drawn here, and we've tried to maintain the main part of the house in this direction. It does fall down towards that direction, so we've done a lot of that, keeping in mind the neighbors. And we expect the landscaping, to landscape the perimeter to give the neighbors privacy and also to shield the house from view as much as possible.
Yeah, as it is now, there's you can see this neighbor, a little tiny bit of this neighbor's house, and we'll skirt that, and you can see a little bit of this person's house, and we'll skirt that, and that's the only neighbors you can see on the property. It's completely secluded, really.
Okay. Anything else you want to present? These are the site photographs.
Those are some of the site photos. Those are not the ones that I turned in, but
are these the applicant's site photos?
No. Oh, yes.
So these are from staff?
Yes.
Okay, so these are staff photos.
What's that? House is that?
That's the house right here.
Next door.
Oh, okay.
It's right next
Okay,
door.
let me just go through these so everybody knows what we're talking about. This house is you're standing basically right here looking that way, so that's that house. This one is you're standing down kind of like right here looking up at this house, that white piece is this house right here. This is kind of standing there looking that direction a little bit. There's a group of trees right in here. This is kind of standing down here. That set of windows right there is that corner of that house. This is from Alston Road looking down the corridor. So where's your little sketch? That's kind of this,
right? That
sketch here. So this little fence, as indicated on the plan, would be down in here somewhere, maybe where that shadow is. This is looking, I think, directly across the road, standing up here looking at the house across Alston over here. This is a little further down the driveway, up in here somewhere. This is looking, I think this is looking back up the driveway. Yeah, looking back up. That's standing down here looking up that way. This is a big eucalyptus that's, I don't know whether it's on this property or their property, but it's in here somewhere. And this is standing on the site, kind of like right there, looking that way. This house is down here somewhere. And this is looking straight across. Okay. All right. Thank you, David. Okay. Anything else that you'd like to share with us?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right. As I may have explained to a few of you folks in the audience earlier, I have several speakers here. Each of you will have 2 minutes. This is public comment. And just so you understand, this is a public meeting. It's conducted very similar to a city council meeting. So we don't have any dialogue between the audience and the board or the applicants back and forth, but you will have the opportunity to use your 2 minutes to share with us whatever issue you may have about this project. We have some written documents that have been submitted to us as late as the beginning of the meeting today. I need to ask Members of the board, have you had sufficient time to look at those letters? Everybody kind of okay with that? We need a little more time?
I'm fine.
Okay. So what I'm going to do first, and this is how it will work, we're now at the public comment period. I'm going to review the letters that have been submitted so that I'm not going to read all of them because there are a ton of them, but I'll try to give you a general feel for what the letters are saying. And then we'll go to public comment. I'm going to ask each of you to come forward, probably use that chair and speak into that microphone. Once we finish public comment, then we're going to bring it back to the board for questions. Once we finish questions, then we'll go to comments. This project is here for a general concept review only. We're not allowed to take any formal action today. At some point, the project will, in fact, come back to us, I assume, if the applicant wants to continue to pursue putting a home on this site. It will come back to this board for a formal action. That's called, the first formal action is called Project Design Review. Our decision is appealable directly to the City Council, not to the Planning Commission, to the City Council. And a decision made for Project Design Review is appealable. If for whatever reason the project is not appealable, then it moves forward so that the applicant is allowed to put together what we call construction documents, which is the full set of drawings that a contractor would need to build the house. That then comes to us for a final review. At that point, we'll make a decision whether we believe the project is completed, in our view. That decision is also appealable and also appealable direct to the City Council. So there is a process that goes through. At each one of those meetings, there's always an opportunity for the public to make comment. Again, we'll go through kind of the same process. So let me just go through letters. I have a letter from Susan and Bobby Shand. They're bringing to our attention that they believe that there is a height restriction and a view corridor issue. They're quite concerned about the size, scale, and bulk of this project and about the FAR at 99%. I have a letter from Bert and Mary McCormick. They've indicated that there may be an earthquake fault line through this project. They're concerned about that. They're also concerned about the hydrology of the site. Hydrology meaning the water that may be on top or under the site as it moves down the canyon corridor. They're also concerned about the size, scale, and bulk of the project. I have another letter from Helgi Kuplit. Excuse me if I destroy your name. They're also concerned about the enormous size, the potential slippage and erosion of the canyon, and some of the other safety concerns, including high fire. I have a letter from a Liz Shaggy, who's also concerned about the size, scale, and bulk and mass of the project, and that the house is too large. I have a letter from John and Barbara Arland. They're also concerned about the size and scale and bulk and about the wildlife in the canyon. I have a letter from Kathy and John Marvin. They too are concerned about the size, scale, and bulk of the project. I have a letter from Vicki Clausen. They also are concerned about the size, scale, and bulk of the house, the issue of water in the canyon, wildlife, etc. Let's see, make sure I get these right. And then I have a letter from Susan Butcher, again about the size of the house, compares it to some other size of the house and also the natural habitat of the canyon. And then let me make sure I've covered every letter. Okay, I think those are all the letters that we've received. And so let's then go to our first speaker is Bobby Shroud. Chad, excuse me.
Sit, Andy.
Okay.
So we need to.
Right here, and if you could speak into that microphone, please.
Sure. Push the button.
It should be a green light, right? Yes,
There you go.
now you're all right. Thank you.
Just one push is enough?
Yes,
Okay.
one push.
I'm Bobby Shan. My wife and I live at 612 Alston, which is immediately adjacent to the property and above it. We actually would look right down on this property, so it's in clear view of, for us.
So
both
you're in
ways.
this home here?
We're in that home there.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
We moved to the canyon about 4 years ago. When we first, this is actually, I'd like to just kind of pass out. This is a view. It's a beautiful canyon. It's pristine. There's wonderful wildlife. When we moved there, we looked around at the different homes that were there. We certainly could have applied for, we have an acre. We certainly could have applied for a larger home and two-story. But we wanted our home to fit in. And we built a one-story that is in keeping with the neighborhood. The neighbors have been happy with what we've done. We had a lot of consult back and forth. And we would ask that we certainly understand that the people coming in have every right to build. We would just hope that they would take into consideration the neighbors, what the pristineness of the canyon, and what the community is at large.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Vicki Clausen.
Is this your microphone?
Oops, yes, sorry. Vicki Clausen.
Hello. I'm at 239 Remetto, and I don't necessarily back up directly to the proposed location. But I am close, and my big concern is the canyon has always been just a natural habitat for a lot of the wildlife, a lot of the beauty of our neighborhood, and we like to keep it as such. And my neighbors and I are concerned about the erosion of a large structure being built on that property. Whether there would be slippage if we finally get some rains or not, and we're just concerned with could it be a major fire hazard if that road into the proposed structure, if it's not wide enough for fire trucks to get down. There's major concerns for the two-story house being built when all of our neighborhood is, or not all, but the majority of the neighborhood is one story. And the second story and the size of that, we just like to keep it as a neighborhood that, all of our structures have been there for years. And we'd just like to keep it, in the size, basic size with the other structures in the area. So,
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Elizabeth Shaggy. Did I say that correctly? Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Elizabeth Saggy, and I live at 623 Alston Road, which is actually across the street from this project. And most of my concerns have already been expressed by Bobby and the other person, but my main concern is the grading issue and the erosion issue that would come through. And the size of the house on that lot. I mean, I just think it's a very large house. As others have said, it's just not in keeping with the neighborhood. So I would just ask for some consideration, maybe a smaller house and less grading, less erosion for that.
Okay, thank you. Valerie Froscher.
Hello, my name is Valerie Froscher. I'm a local architect retained by the Shans, the neighbors immediately above. to speak to some of the architectural elements. My feeling after reviewing the project is that it has some big issues of neighborhood compatibility and of style and of its massiveness. The whole immediate neighborhood is one-story ranch. There's lots of board and bat houses that are very low-slung porches, very, very different impact than this. And in looking at that view easement that was put in place as a protection for the Shands, I know that you've referred to it, but I don't think you're really addressing it, because there should be no structures at all, not pergolas, not chimneys, and you're pushing right up to it. Everything about this house is just pushing the envelope. The roof pitches are very steep, steeper than is necessary given what it's competing with in terms of the neighborhood. And then there's large, kind of unbroken walls. They don't show up so much in these renderings, but in the other elevations they do. So if it proceeds along this line, I think it'd be very important for there to be story poles, for them to be certified by a surveyor, to make sure that everybody understands what the grades are, what the heights are, because it's a very heavy footprint in a neighborhood of very low-slung, low-key houses. And it really should be stepped back.
Okay, thank you. Pat Brody, please.
Hi, I am also working for the Shands. I've been their landscape designer for many years. And on Saturday, I met with Susan Shand on the site and observed that there was a lot of grading and plant removal already taking place on the site. And it appears that large amounts of soil has been brought in and the grade has been raised significantly. So I would think it would be good to have a new survey showing the actual elevation on the grade as it exists now. Another big concern is the second-story roof deck, which has a great impact on the neighborhood. It's large. It has a big fireplace, and any noise that emanates from that will go through the canyon and impact the neighborhood. The other thing is that this is a dark sky neighborhood, and people are out looking at the stars and can see down to the harbor, and I would like it to be considered on the landscape lighting plan and all the exterior lighting that it be kept to a minimum. And I also there was no indication on the plans about screening and how the house will be nestled into the site with landscaping. I didn't see the drawings that were brought in today, so as it exists, I think the best thing is to have story poles erected so we can see the full impact of the house and how it's going to affect the views. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bert McCormick.
I'm Bert McCormick, and I own 1.7 acres just to the south. In fact, our kitchen window looks north over this property. Right here.
This is 243 Ramada?
Yeah, we're 243 Remetto.
Okay, so you're in this.
Yeah, so I've lived there 42 years. I've had a chance to see this lot every day for 42 years. And one of my major concerns, there's a spot just about right where your building is green all the time, green all year. And the ice plant grows and there's nobody watering it. I got hit with this poria fungus in my house. It cost me $87,000 to correct it. And once we corrected the water source, we've now been 10 years fungus free. So my other concern is there's an earthquake fault on this property. I believe it's right about here. And I have really no objections to a single-story ranch-style home. Mine is a single-story ranch home. just every home on Remetto Road is a ranch-style home. So I have no objection in building, but during the lot split hearings, there was some deed restrictions on elevation and distance from the property line, so it didn't block their view from up there, or they couldn't have sold the property. So if they adhere to the restrictions that was laid out in the lot split, and then my other two deal is the fungus that's there, and it'd take me more than 2 minutes to go through that conversation. But that earthquake fault, I'm not a geologist, but I know there's an earthquake fault there, and the records you do have that we obtained during the lot split. Other than that, I think a nice ranch-style house would be good as long as it adheres to those deed restrictions and that water problem is brought to your attention, and how you could correct it, I think, by extending the drain down in more into the canyon, not underneath the house. San Diego lost 8 homes due to this fungus. They call it down in San Diego the house-eating fungus.
If you could wrap up.
Okay, well, I've said everything I want to say. Thank you.
Eric Weston, please. Last speaker.
Is it all right if I go last in case I have...
If that's it, you are the last person. Unless I missed it. Let me see. Susan.
My name's Anya. I'll probably tell you my handwriting is terrible. But I filled one out.
Oh, yes, you did.
There I am.
Did. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, hi, my name is Susan Shand, is that right? We live right here. Where do I look?
Right there.
Right there, that's us. So Bobby spoke earlier. And my concern also is the size and the mass of this property, because we're going to be looking at it. We had hoped that, like what we did when we first moved, we've lived here for 20 years in Santa Barbara, but in the last 4, we built this home from scratch to make something beautiful and compatible with the neighborhood and love our neighbors, and we're all friends, so we want to keep that compatibility going. Also, we lived there, and so for, weeks and weeks in the month of July, trucks were coming in, loads and loads of dirt were being brought in, and the land changed its level for sure. It didn't look anything like these pictures it looks like now. So because I was concerned about that, I waited till today or yesterday to call David Shoemaker to say, I just want to know, is that permitted? Because if it's all permitted, that's fine. But a lot of dirt was brought in, and I just, the levels changed, and I want to make sure that the plans take that into account so the house doesn't go even higher from what it's, however that works. You guys know I don't. And just briefly, Kathy Marvin, who is the director of the Eucalyptus Hill Association, couldn't be here. She's right next door as well. So she and her husband have lived for 30 years in the property and a lovely home. And she just briefly wanted me to read one thing, which says that, from her note, this is an extremely large project for the neighborhood whose homes on average contain about 2,600 square feet and are by and large single-level homes. Please do not honor the request to exceed the maximum allowable floor-to-lot ratio. We request that you and representatives from the planning department do a site visit to see their neighborhood and personally see their project of this magnitude will be very inappropriate in this neighborhood. We hope that it will be clear that the project needs to be moderated significantly before it can be built.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Weston.
Good afternoon. So my name is Derek Weston. I'm representing the Shands and have been authorized to speak on behalf of a number of the other owners. Everybody understands that there can and should be a house here. There's no opposition to that. There's no problem with having the neighborhood developed, much as people enjoy it the way it is. The neighborhood is underdeveloped, and I purposely came last so that I wouldn't repeat what you've already heard. We are concerned about whether the natural grade has already been modified. We think it's very important that the new neighbors in this area try to get a sense for the existing developed community and fit in a way so that their house is appropriate. And we think there's a lot of work to be done. Hopefully you will agree with that, but once the design begins to take shape, it's very important that we have story poles so people really understand the impacts of the proposed project. There is a formal recorded view easement. Obviously, they can't, the proposed owners can't violate the restrictions of that easement. That's also not your concern. The Shands and I think the other neighbors feel it's inappropriate and should be restudied, irrespective of whether there's a legal problem. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to this item? Seeing no one come forward, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Before we go to the board for full questions, I have a few general questions that might help us. Mr. Ng, with regards to an earthquake fault, has any research or indication from staff looked into that at this point?
Not at this point. If the applicant proceeds with this project, we will do an environmental assessment on it, and if we find that a soils or geology study needs to be done during the design review process, we will ask that of the applicant.
Okay, and that includes any hydrology issues? Correct.
Yes, that will be determined when we do the environmental assessment.
And during the environmental assessment, do we look at fire access, given the fact that this is a single road down a flag lot? When does that occur?
Well, we will route it to all for building and fire to look at as well.
Okay, and then I was out at the site and did see the grading. Was the grading that's on that site now, was that done under a permit?
I don't know the details of that. There is a public works permit for some sewer, a water meter. But building and safety, they are aware of the grading, and they will look into that tomorrow, I've been informed.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's see, I wanted to cover, I think the rest will be comments and questions on the specifics.
But real quick, though,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I do want to mention that there is, as I forget, one of the speakers mentioned that there was a lot split. This property was split off from the adjacent property to the north, and there is a Planning Commission resolution 002-07. And I just wanted to note some of the things that this board should pay special attention to if it comes back for review. They're to locate or use a new city standard street light. They should provide shall provide a tree protection plan by a certified arborist for the construction of the new driveway, and if there are significant impacts to any existing trees, we'll also ask for an arborist report and mitigation plan. There's a note that the new driveway for this parcel shall be located on the western portion of the parcel to avoid impacts to oak trees. And lastly,
can I stop you just
yes.
right there? So when you say western portion of are we talking about this finger right here?
Well, that is the north side of the lot.
Okay, so when you say western, what are you referring to?
Unfortunately, I actually need to get some more clarification on that. I myself am not exactly sure where that western portion is.
Okay.
North is towards the street.
It's this one, right? North is
And
that way,
then-
south, east, and west. Okay.
And then lastly, that the house on this parcel should be designed parallel to the topography lines and avoid excessive massing near the eastern property line.
Okay, so I'm clear. The Planning Commission, this is Planning Commission action?
This is a Planning Commission resolution.
So Planning Commission says that the house needs to run parallel to the contours. Is that what you just read?
That's correct.
Okay, and that the bulk of the house should be where?
To avoid excessive massing near the eastern property
Okay,
line.
and so if I read this right, that's north, south, east, and west. That's the east.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
are you finished?
Yeah,
Are you
those
sure?
are those are
Okay.
the big questions. So
Okay.
we can go to specifics. now.
Okay, I
Thank
just process questions, just since all these neighbors and people are here, I was wondering if you could just explain how they stay involved and how they keep up with getting the
I think I just
information.
did that a little while ago, but I'll repeat it before we
Well,
finish.
some of
okay?
these people weren't here.
I just went
And,
over that. I'll repeat it before we leave, before we finish this item.
And I do have one other, probably for David, is now we keep hearing there's this recorded view easement, and I was wondering if the applicant took that into account.
If you recall his presentation, the view corridor is indicated by these dash lines here.
Yes.
And the fact that he indicated that this was below some requirement of 11 feet or something?
280.
280
from the ceiling.
Right here, okay.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
okay. All right, other questions? Okay, if no one else has questions, I'm going to go through several. The eucalyptus tree that's shown in that photograph, right here.
Yeah, that's on the property.
I understand that's on the property. Can somebody indicate where that might be on this plan?
It's about,
You're looking south, right?
it's about here, I think.
Okay, so it's somewhere right in there, but it's not indicated on this plan. Okay. Okay. Mr. Ring, on the grading permit issue that the building department inspects, you mentioned in the planning commission requirements that existing trees are to be protected. Do we have any clue of whether some trees were taken out due to the grading that I saw on the site?
I do not know.
Would you make sure that the building department maybe could assess that for us and let us know?
I'm sure I'll relay that information.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I think that tree is off the site, but again, we don't know yet because we don't have a site plan that I think shows where the existing trees are. And that may be one of the questions. Am I correct that we don't have a plan that really shows where the existing trees
Right.
are? Okay, so
We don't have a survey.
We don't have a survey at this point. Let's see. Let me get down to the specifics of the design. So we have some elevation here. So
This is the section.
that's fine. That's my question. So do we know what these plate heights are? What is that plate height? Can I scale it?
Yes, quarter inch. I'm sorry, 1/8 inch.
Okay, so to the bottom of that beam, that's 12 feet, but this is an open, this is indicating an open ceiling, or is that an
no,
attic?
trusses.
That's an attic?
Yeah.
Okay. And the first floor is at 12 feet?
Yes.
Correct? Okay, and that's pretty much the same over the whole house. Oh, the garage, is this drawn as the three-car garage?
Yes.
Okay, and
just a garage.
that's 13 feet to the bottom of the truss, correct? And
This is the wall, and that's the gym.
okay, and that's at least scales 13 feet. Okay. And then you indicated in the application, it says the pillars at the front, that little sketch that you had, the application, did I read it right? Says the columns at the front, where's that
Yeah,
little
it
sketch?
said
It's
8 feet.
It says 6 feet, and
But
you
no, we're
indicated 8
showing
feet.
8 feet, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
We are showing 8 feet.
okay. 8 feet, view corridor requirements.
That's why we set it off the street 40 feet.
Okay, I think, the street light, Mr. Ing, that you said they had to provide a street light because of this project?
The note in the resol just says location and type of new city standard street light. I don't know the exact
Could you-
details of
could
that.
you
I'll
dig
have to
that out
look into
for us
that.
and find out if they actually have to have one, and then where would it be?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, those are the end of my questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
So we were seeing these elevations.
Yeah,
So
they look different.
Can I put them on this?
The renderings really reflect what the owners are trying to look at, what the owners want now, which is a more traditional Spanish. This basically is. It's the same house. It's just that one has arched windows.
I'm sorry.
Speak into the mic.
That one the renderings have arched windows and these have square windows. It's pretty much the difference between the two. They want a more Spanish, traditional Spanish style.
So
the renderings are better.
Those
Yeah.
are the more.
Given this is conceptual, that's more conceptual.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the gate little sketch you have, is it really going to be lots of different colors? I'm a little confused with that sketch.
No, it's an iron gate and sandstone columns.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See, it looks like it's, who knows, it was painted.
That's part of the Xeroxing process, but these would be wrought iron and steel gates.
Thank you.
In one color?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On the south elevation, it appears different as far as like the elevation goes to the rendering. I think this is the south.
Let me go to the, okay, so this is the south, and I think what the applicant just shared with us that.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
Where's that other sketch? Yeah. That this sketch is more of the preferred south sketch
Okay.
versus what's on
So,
the road.
so on the right-hand side, I mean, it shows a flat site versus like on the plans, it shows it stairway going up. So I'm kind of not.
Oh, over on this side?
Yeah.
Yes. Don't know. Okay. Shall we go back to comments? Back to who has comments?
I have comments. Yeah, I think as far as size, bulk, and scale, this has got to be drastically reduced. I think the size of the house is way too large. In fact, I think in this particular case, I would really encourage that they do the 85% FAR for this. I don't think I could support it. I think the plate heights are way too high. And I also feel that the style of the house that you've drawn there is more Italianate than Spanish colonial. When you have large roof eaves like that, that tends to be more of an Italian villa look as opposed to Spanish colonial. So I'd really invite the designer and architect to really study their Spanish-looking houses. And if they want to do Italianate, that's true too. But I feel at this point, you've got to drastically downscale this house in all different levels to make it appropriate for this neighborhood. Those are my comments.
Other comments?
I feel the same. Mr. Miller, I agree with you. I think you could get the same type of Spanish colonial house and reduce the size of the height of the house. And having these massive things that high, they don't need to be that high. I don't know what the owner is or what you're striving for, but you could reduce the size, bulk, and scale greatly by lowering the height of the house. And I would also, talking about the trees, we don't have a tree plan, so we can't really see what is blocked and what's not blocked by the neighbors and by the house itself. So we're kind of left at a standstill at this point. At least I am. Go ahead. I'm finished.
Yes.
Are you done?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with everyone's comments so far. I also think it's going to be really important to have story poles for this project, even when you come back with a new design, just because of the contention in the neighborhood. What's the other thing I was going to say? I just lost it. The style, I agree with the styling of the house, that really doesn't read as Spanish architecture to me either. I think it needs to really be finessed, and it's very interesting that in the sketch, it looks on that the particular side there, the right side of that picture, is not at all what you have here as far as grades are concerned. So we can't really tell what's going on at this point. It doesn't seem accurate. So it's very difficult to weigh in too much, other than the fact that it's pretty clear that the 12-foot plate heights are really out of line and need to come down. Also, I think we should require a survey to survey all existing trees on the site, and so that we can then look and see what the species are and the heights and what needs to be protected and what doesn't.
Any comments, Ms. Pierce?
I'm in agreement with the rest of the board about story poles, existing landscape conditions, reduced square footage, and plate heights.
Okay. Yes. Ms. James?
I am in agreement with all of you as well, and I'm very curious about the grading. If there is a survey that was done at the time of the lot split, I don't know, but just to compare a previous survey with the current survey to check on that grading issue. And I cannot support the size, bulk, and scale at all. Thank you.
Other comments?
I agree.
All right, I'm going to go to my comments. This needs to start over. To be real blunt with you, you're way out of line. This is not appropriate. If you're going to do a Spanish-style home that's certainly compatible with the neighborhood, which is ranch style, if one has ever been to Andalusia in Spain, which is where the bulk of our architecture comes from, that's what you see on all these sketches that are in this room. If you go to the ranchos of Spain, and even if you go to Mexico, you'll notice that the issue of size, bulk, and scale are very important in a true Spanish hacienda. And the scale has to do with the relationship of the eave of the tile roof to the relationship of the human scale. And the Spaniards, in general, were fairly small people. And they didn't spend a lot of time building up big things unless they were doing cathedrals. So essentially those ceilings were low. Yes, they had vaulted ceilings, maybe in a dining room or a major living space, but the rest of it was low. So the plate heights you're introducing here are totally out of sync with what you're suggesting in terms of architectural style. The slopes of the roof, if you look at George Washington Smith, some of the people that we all revere here in terms of done beautiful Spanish buildings, you will notice that the roof slopes are 3 at 12, sometimes 4 at 12, but rarely steeper than that. So what you've sketched here in either of these sketches is not appropriate. Windows are punched openings, and I think it was alluded to that this sketch looks more Italianate, which was an effort to open the walls when that architecture was introduced to the world. If you look at Spanish Andalusian architecture, it was built of very thick stone walls, or in our case in California, adobe walls, and the windows were punched. So they were relatively small. You know, one of the challenges that we had here in Santa Barbara early on in the early history of this city is that, yes, the homes, the adobes, were built of adobe. The windows had to be brought around on the ship around Cape Horn to deliver it here. So they were pretty expensive. So you didn't spend a lot of money on big windows. So I really do think that dealing with size, scale, and bulk, and remember there are 3 different things. So first of all, the size of this house is way too big. I know that you may go back and look at some of our decisions recently on some other projects that have been on 1-acre lots or larger, where we have allowed, I think in one case we allowed 104%, we've allowed 100%, but I think in this particular location, I'm not going to be able to support any house that exceeds the 85%, given the nature of the site, its location in the canyon, et cetera. From a staff standpoint, I'm going to be very interested to see what hydrology says, what it says about this earthquake thing. My experience, having done some major buildings in the community with earthquake, you have to be a certain distance from a known fault line. So if there is a known fault line, we want to know what that distance buildable is. I'm quite concerned the grading has occurred on this site, and we don't know whether trees have been destroyed. And I think I agree with Ms. James. We want to see a before survey, and we want to see a survey the way it is now. I think that you really do have to go back and really rethink this project from beginning to end. The placement of the house does not adhere to the Planning Commission requirement that the footprint needs to be parallel to the contour lines. I'm very concerned about that big eucalyptus tree that's sitting here. I happen to participate in a very community broad action that saved the eucalyptus trees at our city library, which are very similar, I believe, to this specimen here. I don't want to see that tree destroyed. There is some tree configurations down here, and I think you were alluding to it. We want to know
Looks like it's right here.
where these trees are, having been down to this site. I walked this site on Saturday afternoon. I want to know where these trees are. I want to know how high they are. I think in general, the size of the house and floor plan can be reduced considerably, even having all the same functions, and I've said this on other occasions, where people want a lot of things in their house. The proportions and sizes of the rooms really need to be looked at in a very careful way. Square footage devoted to hallways and corridors. In an Andalusian home, you would have not seen that kind of space. So I really do think that this project needs to be rethought from the beginning before you come back to us. So I can't see anything here that I could support at the moment in any fashion whatsoever. Okay? I think that the applicant would appreciate a motion with comments so they know which direction to take. Anyone wishing to make a motion? If no one wishes to make a motion, the chair will use his privilege to outline a motion, and then anyone in the room can adopt it. Any of the board members can adopt the motion. I would suggest a motion that would indicate that we would like the applicant to return with a different design, that if they choose a specific style, that the style be consistent throughout, that the plate heights be closer to 8 feet or lower, particularly at a second floor level, that the site plan and floor plan be consistent with the Planning Commission requirements, that the footprint needs to be parallel to the contour lines, that the board wants to see a site survey before the current grading was completed, and we want to see a new site survey with the grading that's there now, including all existing trees. We want to see sections through the site that will include the footprint and elevations, not the footprint, but the elevations of the adjoining homes to the north and to the south and to the east and the west. So that means a site through the whole thing, all the way from Alston Road down into the canyon. I want to see a section to scale, and preferably 1/8 scale. And I want to see a delineated roof plan. And I would encourage the applicant to really understand and study how window fenestration is done in a Spanish-style home, if that's the style of home they choose to present to us. We'll also want to see a preliminary landscaping plan of what you expect to do on this house before it returns, and it needs to return to the full board. That would be my suggested motion.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, ma'am.
To that motion? I can't support the fact that you're saying to make the plates 8 feet or less. That's the only part of your motion that I have a contention with. Would you consider changing that? 8 feet minimum or maximum, or I actually don't mind it higher than 8 feet.
I would say the
one level.
majority, it needs to be at least a minimum of 8 feet. There may be some rooms that should be higher.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Amber, did you get that correction to my suggested motion?
We're changing to a minimum of 8 feet.
Right. Okay. Anyone wish to adopt that motion?
I will.
Okay. Is there a second then?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there further discussion?
May I ask clarification? Did you mean minimum?
Minimum, yes.
Minimum of 8?
Well, that means he can go as high as he wants. So
No,
I think you meant
You don't mean max?
Maximum of 8 feet.
Excuse me for the interruption.
In other words, you're going to have to come back and convince us to go higher. Okay. Right?
Well, let's make
Everybody
sure it's
understand the
worded
motion on the floor?
correctly.
Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, the chair will call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, we'll see you back here when you're ready.
Thank you. This is exactly what
Okay.
we needed.
You take the
scare
Let
these
off your
people.
face.
Okay, we're going to go to item number 4,
Picture
210
belongs
La
to
Vista
somebody
Grande.
else. Somebody else.
We're after that. Or are these all contentious?
Okay, I'm going to read in.
Okay.
Excuse me, could I have quiet in the room? This is a public hearing. I'm going to read into the record this is a new project at 210 La Vista Grande. This is a proposal to demolish an existing one-story, 1,644 square foot single-family residence and a 352 square foot attached two-car garage, and construct a new two-level, 3,300 square foot single-family residence with an attached 486 square foot two-car garage. Also proposed are a total of 1,270 square feet of lower and upper level rear and side yard decks. Proposed total of 3,786 square feet of development on a 19,894 square feet lot in the Hillside Design District is 86% of the guideline maximum floor to lot area ratio. This project will address violations in zoning information report ZIR 2014-00242. This is here for comments only because it requires an environmental assessment. Before we begin and before I have you introduce yourselves, just because I don't know who was here and who wasn't here when I explained how this process works, what we will do, this board has not seen this project until this moment, so we'll be looking at it with new eyes and here in a few minutes. What will happen is the applicant and designer will share with us what they're proposing to do. We will then go to public comment. At that point, I will read in to the record a general outline of the letters that have been submitted to us up until the beginning of the meeting. And then I will open it to public comment. And if you'd like to make a public comment, please fill out one of the little yellow slips over there and hand it to staff so that I have some way to organize who's here. And you'll have 2 minutes to address the board. Once we complete that, the public comment period will close, and we will bring it back to the board for questions and comments. At the end of that, the board, in this particular case, will probably make a motion of some sort, giving some comments or recommendations to the applicant before they return, and part of that motion will be a decision of whether to not have the applicant return to the full board or to the consent calendar. So that's the process, and so welcome. If you could introduce yourselves, please, and use those 2 microphones.
Hello, my name is John Beecham, architect for the owners, Kay and David Rossi. My name's David Rossi. I'm here today with my wife, Kay, in the audience. We're the owners.
Welcome. If you could share with us what you're doing.
Okay. So I'd like to start with this, just to kind of give you a broad sense. There's photos available there. So this is the roundabout at APS as it rolls up in this neighborhood off of Vista Grande. The project site is right here. The main kind of views of the harbor are kind of this direction, just to kind of help you get oriented overall. And a large version of that is, again, here's our existing site. The hillside is sloping down down this direction, so down slope, up slope. So to go through these, just want to give you a sense. You can see that the home is well below the grade of La Vista Grande. This is the driveway cut as it drops down. You can see again the curb cut. This is existing entry to the home now. This is the backside of the existing home. Street side face, the existing entry. And again, you can kind of get a sense, I'm standing across La Vista Grande looking down, or just looking straight out, and the house is, the grade's much lower than the street grade. This is the current north and west sides of the home. This is images for context. This is the home just down below on La Vista Grande. This is the project site. This is the home just uphill, again on La Vista Grande, and this is a home further up here. Coming back down to the west side of La Vista Grande. So we have, this is the view looking into towards this driveway. And this is the existing hedge that you see up here. It's a privacy hedge for the uphill neighbor. Again, this is a view of that hedge through here. And this is a view of the home. This is what we see standing from here. So I just want to give you this for context. I'll kind of would like to come back and talk with these in a moment, but this was existing privacy screens, privacy hedges between neighbors. That's what you're seeing in this image. And this is privacy screening that was along this edge, but we'll come back and to kind of discuss that. And again, these were additional images for what we're seeing now. These images are taken from this little deck and along the house looking back to the uphill neighbor. So with this, what I'd like to just let you know is the Kay and David are part of this neighborhood because it is, it's not just the views that attract them there, but it's also the community. This is a very tight community in a close neighborhood. So when we were beginning design, we wanted to make sure we fit in with that and work within the neighborhood context. There are two-story precedents of additions that have been made in the neighborhood, and that's where we wanted to start our design because of the views are so nice. Once we got into that, we realized that the heights are getting up there, and that we went through and did a full site section survey for this entire region for the homes right around the house, and I'd like to share that with you so you can see it. But when we went through that study, we realized we need to go to a single-story home. So what we've done is we've provided a home that's we're taller than what we have here, but it's still a long, low kind of home, again, sitting into that. So the floor plan itself, and if I may, we have renderings here. I have the exact same renderings in color.
Okay,
Unfortunately, is that okay? Unfortunately, they're not one of your watercolors, but 3D, and then just a little closer. And if you'd like to see the color renderings as well. Oh, that's these. Oh, lots of them. So this is the existing home. This drawing is, we added in it's all the existing conditions. So what we wanted to point out was just the driveway grade to the existing garage. It is fairly significant drop. And you can see from the photos just how much difference there is. So we are kind of set with this garage. The new design, we're pulling it out of the setbacks. The current garage is non-conforming. With this whole north end of the house is non-conforming, so we're going to pull that out. The rest of the home, existing deck, existing kind of terraced area, and then again, you can see how the contours of the hillside falls down. So the configuration of the home now, again, garage in a very similar location, pulled out of the setbacks, and the home is obviously geared towards the view and the daylight. So we have our living areas forming an L through here, and putting, we certainly don't want to turn our back to the street, but we don't want to put the living room on the street because of how we're looking down into the site. So our utility sections are across on the front with guest wing. The entry is in a similar location as it wraps around, and then our bedrooms are across here with our master suite. So the master suite portion is what we were looking at as a two-story element over the garage. We were looking at a full two-story just over the garage. That part is now extended out to keep us as a single story. Now I say single story, we actually have, because of the grade of the hillside tucked in, we can tuck in an office area underneath the master suite. So it's not a two-story above grade, it's kind of a two-story below main grade. This is our roof plan, so you can see how what we're working on here is to try to work with the scale of the neighborhood. The homes that, if you've had a chance to see it, they're all, while some are larger or smaller, there's a variety, but we still wanted to scale it off of La Vista Grande. So we have a little slightly lower roof element on the front, then we step up to our living room area roof, and then back down to the bedroom wing. And then what you see here is a shade canopy for the sun control. These are our hardline elevations just to help to have more notes on them than the renderings would have. But again, just want to point out the elevation of La Vista Grande and how the house is kind of recessed in. So so what we're seeing here are you can see the sunshade canopy extending out and clerestory windows above. So we want to work with this horizontal line and kind of stretch that across the site. And then step it down the hillside. Again, this is that master bedroom area, and then the office area is tucked up into the hillside underneath. Same on the north elevation you see here. So these are the same renderings you have, just in color, just to kind of help explain it. So our entry is beyond this little gate, so you walk in and turn. A lot of that design elements is for when your guests, that's correct, when your guests would step in through that gate, they would have that great view and not, and then turn into the home. This is the guest area, our services and utilities across here in garage. On the west side of that, we have large sliding glass doors through here with a high volume through that living area. But then breaking that scale back down with the sunshade canopy to kind of bring these lines, to step these lines and bring them down in scale a little bit. Decks off the master suite, and then the office area tucked in below. So here's our south elevation. So again, a lot of glass for the views, but we have to control that for sun load. So that's what this outboard canopy. And this may or may not be solid. We're just looking at it as a way to kind of deflect the majority of that heat load. Entries through this gate into the entry door here. And then on the north side elevation, again, clerestory windows, garage, because we want this horizontal line of this roof line, but we don't want it to feel like this big solid mass that's just punching through. And then we provide a few more just different views to kind of help explain. So that's the predominant element of the architecture, but there's another element of this project that we want to share with the board. And again, it's because we want to be sensitive to the neighborhood. So Kay and David had, when we were looking at a two-story home, we really wanted to understand how would that impact the neighborhood. So we were doing site study sections for again, so you can see how broad we took it. We were able to shoot grades and understand building pad footprints and ridge heights for all the surrounding neighborhood. Neighbors. Because we really wanted to understand and make sure we're not impacting anyone, or if we do, it's as minimal as possible. So with that study, this is our project site with our current roof lines. This is a single-story layout. So immediate uphill home, downhill, and these are uphill. So same imagery. I just wanted to be able to have an aerial so you could get oriented better. But again, we just really want to understand. And so it's a big extra step that we took, to Rossi's credit. So it was really nice to be able to put grade elevations to these and really know what we're looking at. So we've met with the neighbors, and we were able, let me back up. The neighbors were all very gracious and had us over so I could do photos and really start to try to understand what their view impacts might be. So starting with the neighbor to the east side at 1510 Mill Circle. So we did a site section cut all the way through that portion, as you can see, understanding where their footprint grade and our footprint, floor level existing. And these are views from living areas in the house. One is a little bit further to the south, one is right off the living room. So it's really difficult to see because it's below the hedge line, but here's where I've tried to really project where the roof line would be. And what I'm doing is the higher roof line of the living volume, not the bedrooms that are lower. So I really feel like we're below that hedge line as it sits now. You can kind of see it in profile here. So that was a nice revelation. And a lot of it you can get sense of scale is from this one palm tree, from the different photos. It's a little reference marker. Reg Latham is a stalwart of the community, so we really wanted to make sure we were looking at how it would impact his view. He was one of the early ones in this neighborhood.
Rod Latham or Reg?
Reg Latham. But so you'll see one photo from here, and one is taken out on this deck. So I just wanted to see how we would work with that. And again, we ran the grades and really understood the whole profile of that site section. And you can see the existing roof now. These lines are light, but I feel like this is where we're going to be with our roof lines now. It's very, faint, but again, we're below that horizon line by a significant amount. And similar here, it's again quite low. So after we've reviewed this, we realize our the wilds to the north are the ones who would have any impact on our current work.
They're above.
This is uphill. That's correct. So our two-story volume is where we felt we would impact them too much. So we pulled the house down, stretched it out. That site section goes through here. So we have a little over 8 feet difference between building footprints. And again, you're looking at these kind of splayed through the 2D drawing cut. So we realized, we weren't anywhere near 30 feet on our two-story design, but we could tell it was just too much. So again, single-story design. So here's our site section cut. And what this drawing represents is another foot lower of roof heights, because we were able to meet with the wilds and try to work through what were any potential impacts to them. So after, I don't know if you were noticing the numbers on the first drawings, we were another foot higher. We've lowered all that since. And that's what's represented in these drawings. So these are, again, two separate areas of his home off their living and dining area, a little patio. The house extends much further, but their living and dining area is tucked in closer. So we feel that this is where our high point roof would be, and this is our lower bedroom roof. Same here, there's our high point roof. To give you reference, here's the existing roof line. Now when we started this study, you could not see any of this. This is what we had. What happened, this is just so you understand some of the history. The city had some kind of water main element. They took it down and went it through an easement out here. During that process of this significant tree that has been here for as long as anyone can remember, was cut down. And then since then, additional trees have been cut or trimmed. So now if you go back to the photos, you saw that's why the privacy element has opened up. So we are proposing to bring back additional privacy screening just for each other, for the wilds looking down and the Rossies looking up. But that's just one element of the project that's going to have a lot of significance.
Anything else to present?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to go to public comment, and I have several letters that were submitted to us. And these are free, just additional meetings. Do the rest of the board doesn't have these. Okay, so I'm going to need to summarize those in a little more detail. Okay. I have a letter from a Diana Bezarek, who's in support of the project. I have a letter from a Helene Siegel, who's in support of the project. I have a letter from Janet and Bob Cates, who indicate they're in support of the project, and all of these folks indicate they've seen the drawings. A letter from a Melissa Christo, who's in support of the project. A letter from Ray Ketzel, who is an architect, and his wife, Virginia Ketzel. They're in support of the project. I have a letter from a Cynthia and Ted Martin. They're in support of the project. I think those are the ones we had by 3 o'clock today. Let me see what these others. There's a letter or an email from Sue and John Burke. We are excited about Kay and David Rossi's project at 210 La Vista Grande. The house was in disrepair, a bit of an eyesore for many years. Proposed new home will upgrade the neighborhood. So I'm reading this as supporting the project. I have a letter from or an email from a Patricia Hampton. We live at 127 Cedar Lane. Would like to comment on the initial plan. As you may be aware, currently there are at least 6 projects taking place in the general 3-block area of the neighborhood, all with various styles, both in design and levels of construction. And at least 5 other projects have completed within the last several years. Regarding the plans for 210 La Vista Grande, said plans are within keeping with the neighborhood in scale and square footage. This is an important factor. As a result, I'm paraphrasing the paragraph. As a result, the impact on the neighbors is minimal, if at all. So I'm reading that as supporting the project. I have a letter from Dave Nordell, an email. My wife and I own the property at 182 La Vista Grande Drive. Our home is located 2 houses above the applicant's property on the same side of the street, so I'm assuming it's that house. Is that a 2-story house?
This is a 2-story addition.
Yeah, that's as I recall. I was out there on Saturday looking at it. Public views. The construction of the proposed residence will greatly diminish the view from La Vista Grande. Raising the roof 3.5 feet above the existing roof height will significantly diminish the view from the street. We live in the neighborhood with a large number of walkers, and this development have negative impact on the aesthetics in the neighborhood. There's a reason that the existing house has a profile and roof height that it does. Neighborhood compatibility. The construction of this proposed residence will greatly diminish compatibility with the neighborhood. The project is significant in its size and scope. Proposed total 3,687 square feet is more than double the size of the existing 1-story single-family residence. While the size of the new development is technically within the Hillside Design District guideline, will be much larger than any residence on the street. Design issues. The design of the house is inconsistent with that of other homes in the neighborhood. The depth of the new development extends well beyond the existing footprint of the current residence, and as a result, the mass of the new residence has significantly changed. With a footplate of 13 feet, not only has the square footage of the house increased dramatically, so has the overall mass. Based on the following, we recommend story poles, reduce the height of the structure, and step down the height of the new development. David and Sandy Nordell. Okay, I think that summarizes all the letters. Anybody want to see these letters?
You're missing one Tim Wow.
Yeah.
There's a light.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, there is. I'm sorry. I
And
didn't
we
get to
have
the other 2.
pictures, too.
Yeah, I've got other 2 here. Okay, so I have a letter from Roger Thompson. Basically, I think they said almost exactly what I just read from the other person. Looks like the same 4 points. House is too big, too high, etc. And then I have a letter from, let's see, I have 2 more letters. I have a letter from Timothy Wild and Carol Creighton. They're the home right here. They want to bring to our attention public views from the street. They feel the project will diminish those views. They have several photographs from their various points along their deck and their home, and including inside the house looking out. And they believe that the project will have an impact on their private views. And they also point out this issue of our guidelines, et cetera. You've all read that letter. And then I have a letter, which this is the one we weren't able to most of us weren't able to download this afternoon, so I'm going to read, paraphrase it best I can. They're the folks that live at this house, corner of La Vista Grande and Mill Circle Drive. They appreciate the fact the applicant and owners have taken a long time to put this design together, but they do have some concerns about the design. They're concerned about the grand view from the neighborhood. There is constant conversation about tree trimming and view blockages for the most part of the neighbors all walk through. There are quite a few people with houses in the neighborhood who no longer have views due to construction and vegetation. The only time they get to appreciate the views when they're walking or driving down the street. Proposed project will block several of these public views that we neighbors currently enjoy. 210 La Vista Grande is downslope with a totally unobstructed view of the city and harbor from most any place on the lot. There's no reason the house can't be planned that retains the public current views over the top. Suggestions that they use an 8-foot plate height rather than a 13-foot. That they grade the pad lower, that the step down to the lower level, the master bedroom section. Second concern is how the plan will affect the neighbors to the north, the Wilds. Some additional concern about the size of the house, garage, and decks being larger in scale to the style of the surrounding neighborhood. While the lot size, square footage would normally be in compliance with the house this size, due to 29% slope, they're choosing to use the top portion of the lot. And their final concern is the flat roof and potential placement of solar panels that can be installed. So the bottom line is we have no objection to this project if it is lowered to be at an under current roof height, peak height of 11 feet, and the Wilds Ocean view is retained, proper placement of solar panels is planned. Kevin and Padine White. Okay. And then, I think I read that one. So did I catch everybody now? I think I got them all. Okay. So those are the letters. Let's go to public comment. And the first person I have is Charles Curtis. If you'd come up and sit in that chair, please, and speak into that microphone. Each of you have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, I'm at 1515 Knoll Circle. That's in, again, our view will be affected by this. I'm opposed to the project as it stands. I'm opposed to a second story. Other than that, I'm again 1515 Knoll Circle. I am where?
Okay. Over here somewhere?
No. This is Latham. This is
1510. So are you there?
This is I. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our. This is I. So I could see an obstruction of the view. So a second, there's a
you understand there's a second story underneath the first one.
It's not. There's no second.
There's no second story above here.
It's the lower one.
So you oppose the.
Well, my main point is that if we have no loss of our view, then I really don't have an objection. The White's letter, I share some of that frustration. The trees have grown up, and there's a precedent for second story. Ann Rojas about over here put in a second story, so there's some frustration there. But if it doesn't affect the view that I still have of the city, then I don't object.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker we have is Kevin White.
Yeah, I'm living in the house. You read my letter, so I'm not going to reiterate that, but you enumerated my concerns for the most part. All of the people that were in favor of the project don't live very close to the project. They're in the neighborhood for sure, but they're not affected by the size of it. And the final thing is that I really think it would be helpful for everybody if we really had some story poles out there so that everybody could see exactly what's happening. There's some question on where the final grade would be, and when you put a single level on top of that with that high of a plate, it's going to really be an effect. And also, when you have a flat roof going out, the current roof is a pitched roof at 11 feet, and so you see the edge of that, and you're only seeing half of the roof. And when you have it's like a big runway going on an aircraft carrier or something, that's going to be out in the view. And they did, with our hedge as high as we have it, which is probably not as high as it should be, we should probably be lower, but we have it that high on purpose. It's right along that roof edge, and going up 3 feet, we are going to see it. And from our bedroom end, we will definitely right now we currently see the roof, so it will be definitely coming into our views. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the last speaker I have is Timothy Wild.
Hi, my name is Tim Wild. As you can probably guess from the name of the street, La Vista Grande, it's a little bit about the views. And we purchased our house approximately 23 years ago, primarily for the views. And the new proposed home, after reviewing the single-family residence design guidelines, I don't feel that it really meets the intent of those guidelines. And as I mentioned in my letter, under the Good Neighbors Guidelines tips, Good Neighbors tips for considering neighbors' views, it states to locate new dwellings so that they interfere minimally with the neighbors' views. I don't feel that the proposed project does that. We have suggested a number of things. One of the big issues here is the 13.5-foot plate height of the highest portion of the building. It extends out and blocks quite a bit of our view. So we would ask that that be reduced. We would ask that the foundation maybe be lowered, and the portion that, especially the new portion that extends the living area from the current footprint out towards the ocean. We would request that the applicants erect story poles and invite you to come and see the property.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else wishing to address this project? David Nordahl?
Nordahl. So I'm at 182 La Vista Grande. You read my letter.
Which is where? That house?
Yep, that's me.
Okay.
First comment is that the street is primarily ranch-style homes. So I see this as a pretty significant departure from what we've seen in the past. And the size of it is, from what I can see, is dramatically different than what we've had in the neighborhood. The size and mass of this property with is a very low-profile house. And now with this extension, I think it's going to impact all of us more than we expect. And so I think one of the things that I'll reiterate Kevin's comment is that pretty much everyone that surrounds this project is against it, from what I heard today in the comments that were made, because those are the folks that are most impacted by this development. So I reiterate, I can't read a set of plans. So I think to have a set of story poles up here, just to have an understanding of what 13-foot high roof line would be, I can't tell from my property how this impacts me. It's all guesswork. It's clear it impacts anybody. I don't know how many people we have walking up and down these streets every day, but it clearly impacts anybody driving or walking along this area. So I think from a neighborhood standpoint and the opposition you've heard, I think it's really important to see some story poles to get a feel for the size of this property. And lastly, I'll just reiterate what I put in my letter. There's a reason. This isn't happenstance that house, the existing house, is located where it is graded to where it was and the height of that roof line. It was specifically developed that way to protect everyone in La Vista Grande and Knoll Circle. So to deviate from something that was decided by the city and approved by the city 50, 60 years ago in a completely different program and plan
Sir,
just seems odd to me.
wrap up, please.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, Chair is going to close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. This project is here for comments only because it still needs an environmental assessment.
Yeah, what are your plate heights for your rooms? I'm curious to know.
Can you go back to your building section?
So this portion would be about part of it's like roof structure depth. So I've been giving you top of roof because that's what most people are so concerned about. So our interior here, we'd like to try and get 10.5 foot, 11 foot volume through this portion, slightly higher across the front. And the interior portion, we're trying to get a 14 foot ceiling. So we have 15 foot 6.
You have a building center?
No, but the dimensions are on here.
Okay. Other questions?
No.
It was at 11. The existing house right now is at 11. At the peak of the roof is what?
It's 11 foot 7.5 above.
So you're
sea level.
3.5 feet higher than that.
Where is is this the current level of the house, the finished floor of the house?
That's correct.
Okay, so basically this first floor is at the current house elevation.
That's correct.
Okay, and so if I look at the plate height, then the plate height appears to be 14.5 feet above the finished floor line, and I think what we heard was the ridge line of the current house is at 11 feet above the floor line?
It's 11 foot 7.5, 11 foot 8.
So just to be clear, I don't have a pencil. So just to be clear, then 11, roughly the top of the current ridge is right there.
That's correct.
So the differential that's sketched here is about 4 feet to the top of the ridge. Okay. All right, other questions?
I'd like to talk a little bit about the decks.
Yes.
And the sizes of the decks. There's 2 of them.
Oops.
So can you just explain the size and then where they are located?
This deck would be on the main living area, and then stepping down this deck. So we don't have, we want to kind of flow with the grades of the topography. So that's why this deck steps down from this
And
one.
what's the size of the larger one there?
From the house is 25 feet out.
8?
That's correct. So there's 25 feet, and then the lower one is just under 15 feet.
25 by what?
It is 41 foot 9.
Right, 41.
25 by 41.
Or you can say 42. It's if
Okay.
you round up.
And the other one?
Is 38 feet by 15 feet.
Thank you.
Those are rough.
Yes.
So I see railings. What was your intention with the railings around this deck?
Certainly not glass. So probably more of a aircraft cable type.
Yeah, with drawings like glass.
No, we just didn't.
Just-
Right. Didn't want to get too muddy.
Okay, yes.
I have a couple questions. Did you explore going below the existing grade of the existing house?
That's a great question. We did. And what we're stuck against is this existing level of La Vista Grande. So we're having to work backwards from this point. And already as a car comes out from this low grade and trying to make up that much grade difference in such a short distance, you can bottom out a car already. So we're really nervous. I explored that because it's a that would have been a nice way to get things down. But I would have to pull the grade, almost to the neighbor's property to get the same flow of a car. So it's that driveway that drove it.
Okay. And then also the
Right here.
Oh, thank you.
the lower level. What's the plate height on that?
That plate height. That's right. I put the dimensions on here. So it's 10 foot. So the plate in there would be 9 feet, just under. So we're 10 foot one from that floor level to the top of the deck above it, of the master suite deck.
Other questions? Let's see, I want to go back to your site plan just right here. Just reference me on this project, this flat area here, where is that in relationship to this?
You see how this little point sticks out?
Yeah.
That's, this deck extension was out into here.
Okay,
So
and
we're
it goes
pulling
back, the current house line is right there, is that what I'm reading?
That's correct.
Is it there or this line?
This line is the house, and this is the,
Overhang?
that's correct, the overhang.
Okay, so that set of windows right here is right here.
That's correct.
Okay,
And
so
the existing deck is further out. We've pulled it in.
so
from where
all
it
of
is
this
now.
right now is deck area.
That's correct.
Okay, all of that's deck area, and then this is a walkway going down here, and this is some flat area, at least right in here, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. I think you answered the question on the ridge line. Let me go back to the hedges. The hedge you referred to, I think maybe the aerial photograph would work better. Where that is. So this hedge is on your client's property, correct? Or no? Or is it on both properties? Do we know?
It's kind of sharing. It's on both. The hillside sloping right there.
And roughly how high is that hedge? Do we know?
Oh, boy.
8 feet, 10 feet? It's this one over here.
12 feet or 15.
That's correct. So
it's higher than 8 feet.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you explain what happened over here in terms of the city putting in this water line so that the screening you had there went away, correct?
That's correct, and it's been thinned out.
Okay.
What we
And,
did.
and whatever this is right here, it looks like a hedge or a bush. It's got a big shadow line. That's on this property, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And
That's
this is
an oak
on
tree.
your property or this property?
This one straddles it.
Okay.
It looks.
So
It's
kinda
too close
shares
to
both.
call.
Okay.
This hedge is 6 foot, about 5 or 6 foot from our side. You can see over that.
Okay.
Okay, so then that would put us on to this property.
Okay. And let's see, finished floor. Okay, those I think answered my questions. Anybody have other questions? Okay, let's go to comments. This is here for, yes.
I guess I'm just wondering, and this is just a question, couldn't you keep the garage at that level and the rest of the house is lower?
We discussed that, and once we kind of decided no steps in the house, no second story, let's have, try to keep it all on one level, just for the.
Okay. Oh, I do have one final question. On this house over here, you did indicate, you did show us some photographs. You took some photographs from that house toward your project. So this is that little patio area that you took photographs from?
That's correct. Unfortunately, the Wilds home, this is their dining and living.
Okay,
and
so
they
there
put a
are
patio
there
here.
are windows here.
There's windows here. The property goes out to.
And there's windows here. What am I looking at here? What's that?
Carport.
That's the carport. Okay, that's where I saw the cars in here, and this
That's
is
correct.
the landscaping. Okay. Right? Other questions? Okay, let's go to comments. Just so I share with the public, this board, yes, has to follow or should follow the guidelines that have been pointed out to us, and most of us have reviewed that several times. But the city attorney has advised us that we're not to guarantee anyone's private window view. So that isn't an issue that's under our purview. We are not to guarantee any private views from any single private property. What we are allowed to do is to look at the general view corridor of the general neighborhood, which several speakers have brought to our attention. We do and concern ourselves with issues of privacy, and we do take a great deal of time to look at that. And you'll probably hear some comments as this project moves forward. But just to delineate, we're not here to guarantee people's private views. City attorney has advised us that that's not something we have control over. So if someone's concerned about a specific view from a specific window or a specific point on their property, that's not something we can guarantee and force an applicant to guarantee that that view will not be blocked. So let's go to comments.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So that being said,
Yes.
I think it's important that the public know, too, that they have every right to build a second story if they want to, which would put them at 30 feet high. So, I mean, they have a right to go up to a second story. So I think this client has bent over backwards, personally, to take care of the neighborhood and the neighbors' views as best that they can and still have the house that they desire. I mean, I think the sections that you cut through from everybody's property, I think that was exemplary. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that before in a presentation, and I've been on the board since 2007. So I'm very impressed at the amount of work and effort that you've put into this. And I think that probably because of the neighborhood, it probably would be a good idea and a neighborly thing to do to put up story poles so that people can get a sense of what it's going to be like in the end. There are probably some opportunities here to bring that down just a little bit more if you looked at it again. I think the style of the house is really lovely. The one thing, though, that I think is not following our guidelines is that your decks are not set 15 feet back from the property line to ensure neighbors' privacy in that sense. So I would highly encourage you to relook at these decks as far as keeping them 15 foot back from the property line to get a little bit more in compliance with our guidelines on decks. That's actually more for a second story deck, though, is it not, Mr. Chair?
I believe it applies in both cases. Am I right?
It's just a second story deck.
There was
so
just
really,
the second story.
That's true. So actually, you don't really have to do
well,
that. It would be a neighborly thing to do.
I think your comment would only apply if this deck is closer than 15 feet off the master bedroom, and I had it on my comment.
You had it on your comments as well. Okay, so it would be a neighborly thing to do to pull it back a bit from the more front. You're within the setbacks. You're within your rights to leave it the way it is, but it's something to think about.
You want to hear my comments?
Recommend. And the size of the decks, they are rather generous. I understand why you're looking out at a beautiful view. How much is really necessary? Well, might be something else to consider is to just keep the deck size down just a little bit more. Okay. Next.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, I am extremely uncomfortable with this house because one of the things that you're doing, and you have every right to do what you want, is you're tearing down a house and bringing in a whole new, different vernacular to the neighborhood. So you're introducing a new style of architecture, which is fine. However, it's a flat roofed, and I'm looking at your photographs, and none of them are flat roofs. And I've discovered that what's very difficult with flat roofs is they look very unattractive from looking above onto a flat roof. They tend to generate something of a commercial building, like a doctor's office or a strip mall. So I have a hard time reconciling flat-roofed homes because they do have a whole different experience. And like I said, you're introducing a whole new style of architecture. It's probably more appropriate in Palm Springs, but for this neighborhood, I think you need to be a little sensitive. I understand that neighbor saying that this house that was here originally was really sensitive with the other view corridors. And like Fred said, we don't guarantee views. And I'm also very uncomfortable with the plate height, so I don't think I can support this project in its current configuration.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
I mean, I too am having trouble with that. I realize they can do a second story, but I guess with the Good Neighbor guidelines and some of the views that I'm seen here from the other neighbors, and the fact that the roof is flat, 14.5-foot ceiling just is really high. I don't know why it would have to be that high. And yeah, so I'm having trouble with
Other comments? Mr. Matisha, any comment?
I disagree. I don't see what's wrong with having a house that's, so the other houses are all pitched roofs. Not pitched roofs, but, yeah. I could recommend that it come down a foot or so. It doesn't have to be 14 foot high. I think you get still the same effect of the clear story, the high windows above your shade structures, and still get that same type of architecture by lowering it a foot and keeping it, getting it down a little bit lower. I see the neighbors, they think that they walk by this. I mean, every other house looks like it's blocking the view when you walk down the street, and that's the only house that you can look through the view from the street. Not in my backyard. Slight comment. I think if we lowered that just a little bit, it would satisfy a lot of people, and I could support the project.
Ms. Bernstein?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think there's a lot of thought going into this on behalf of everybody, and I appreciate the neighbors coming in. I appreciate the extra effort that the applicant has made to reach out and try to resolve a lot of things before we get too far along. I think that it does push the envelope, but I think it's on a track where it's moving toward being a project that I could support. However, it's so unique right now that I was thinking if it could be softened in terms of the other comments that some people have already made, lowering it, the color, the landscaping, the height, just softening it so the street view and the reaction at the public's going to get walking by it. Maybe you could put all that extra glass in the back and keep that design feature, but maybe soften up the front view a little bit.
Okay. Other comments? Okay, I'm going to.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I just had one more thought. There's been talk about, that, the neighboring homes are all ranch-style homes, but, no one's going to build a new home in the ranch style anymore. Those were from the 60s. It's like, I think there's got to be a little bit of reality check here about this, that most new homes are leaning in a little bit more modern direction, or they're going Spanish. Or
It's in the context of being respectful for the neighborhood context. It has nothing to do with
But they're all
style.
in transition. They're going to transition. All of them are, and this is one of them that's doing that. And, that's where the difficulty comes in neighborhood compatibility here with our board. There are some that are staunch about that it has to look just like what's around it. Well, I don't personally believe that. I think that that's an unrealistic point of view, and that modern architecture has a place in this town. Just had to go on record as saying that.
You do that all the time.
Thank you. I know. I intend to keep doing it.
And I keep on saying what I say.
I was not talking to you directly, by the way.
I'm going to go to my comments, and it dovetails on Ms. Woolery's comments. We have two houses, I believe, if I'm correct. This house is that house right there, and it sits just above this house. This house, carport, has a flat roof on it. The house itself has a very low pitch. I suspect it's either at 3 and 12 or below 3 and 12, which is probably similar to this home because all of these homes were probably built close to it at the same period of time. If you look at this house above here, this has a slightly higher pitch. This is probably 3 and 12 or 4 and 12, and it has a second floor addition that steps up the grade. That's the second floor addition. One of the things that we're constantly dealing with is size, scale, and bulk. And part of the fact that we've got some one-story functions here. So if I sketch the footprint, and I believe I'm doing this correctly, does it go out to here like that? Your footprint out to here?
That's the roof line. The footprint.
But the footprint is here, so
Yes.
footprint is like that. Okay. So if I take that footprint, and yes, there's a little piece of this that's down on the bottom level, and I put that footprint compared to this footprint, and this includes the garage. So here's a footprint over here. There's a footprint on top of that home, and that home is like that. If I put the footprint, sorry, David, roll drawings. If I put the footprint over here, this is, I can't see under the tree, but I'm assuming that that footprint is this big. The footprint is not terribly out of line, and yes, you can do the math and you can deal with the 86% or 85% of the FAR, but this is not out of character in terms of the footprint on the ground with some of these other homes. Yeah, that one's probably considerably smaller, so is this one. But I think this aerial photograph demonstrates that the house footprint isn't much different than many of the other homes in the area. With regards to the conversation about contemporary architecture, I tend to agree that, you know, the neighborhoods, and particularly here in Santa Barbara, are fairly eclectic. We rarely have neighborhoods that have all the same style of architecture, or we're all built the same. And when we do, and the Mesa is probably the best example, where many of those homes were built in one fell swoop by developers. Over the years, those homes have all changed fairly dramatically, where we see, even now, we see homes that have a Spanish style, that are being converted to a board and bat style, et cetera. So there aren't a lot of neighborhoods that really reflect an adherence to an exact model. And so in this neighborhood, we're seeing, in my view, yes, we have some one-story, large, low-slung footprints, but we also have some two stories, et cetera. So I'm not as concerned about that. With regards to the issue of the flat roof, I think, yes, the color of the flat roof is very important when you see it from the air. But this house, unlike some of the other homes that we've seen in the Riviera, where we do have homes that really step up, and you do, in fact, see down on top of that roof, yes, you might see a glimpse of the top of this roof, but you're going to see it at a very low angle. I kind of doubt it, given the studies that you've done, and I really appreciate that. If we get most of our applicants to do this, would solve a lot of angst that this board has. We can't seem to convince applicants to do these big sketch sections, so I really appreciate that. That's very, very important, because it really begins to understand the relationship with all of these other homes. But having said that, the flat roof is probably acceptable. Again, I'll get down to the color. The issue of the solar panels, just so everyone understands, the position of solar panels, the location of solar panels, the angle of the solar panels, et cetera, is actually out of our hands. It's a state law. The state of California took that away from us. The only action this board has is whether or not we agree about the color of the framing on the solar panels. That's the only thing we've been able to dictate. The position, the location, whether or not an applicant can put solar panels on a roof, et cetera, that's totally out of our control. If an applicant wants to do it, the state of California says they can put them on the roof. Local entity, you have no say over it. With regards to the view issue, particularly from this home, you know, we've had some cases here before this board where we've had some folks that are very upset about the fact they're going to get their blue views blocked. And in the cases where we've actually erected story poles, and I think given the nature of where you're going, that story poles probably will be appropriate, but that's not a requirement at this action today. That will be an action later on. I think that will obviously be very, very helpful for people to view this. But I don't believe that's going to have a significant impact on the views from this house. Yes, there might be one window or one small portion of a patio where a little view might get clipped off, but In the long term, this home sits way out. It still has full advantage of all the views that are shared in the photographs. I spent Saturday afternoon out here. I parked. I walked up and down. In fact, I met some folks that I think live a little further up here. They were taking their evening walk. They were as concerned about, as everyone else has expressed, about the general view corridor from La Vista Grande. I don't believe, given the data that's been shared with me, the sections and the floor plans, et cetera, will really greatly impact that ability for walkers to enjoy the view. One of the things that's always very difficult is lots of folks have a very big challenge of understanding 3 dimensions off a 2-dimension drawing. For us architects, we live in it every day. That's a little easier for us. So yes, story pulls will probably help people to begin to understand what the volume looks like. So I think that would be helpful. Specifically to your proposed elevations, if I can get to them. Oops, back the other way. I think that the lowering of this midsection is probably fairly important. One of the things I would be concerned about as this project moves forward is the lantern effect that occurs particularly to the street. We can't do much about the lantern effect to the city. We have it all over the Riviera. We have it all over along APS. All the homes up there have a light effect onto the city, and that's just part of who we are as Santa Barbara. But I would be very reluctant to include those windows facing to the street, because that just acts as a lantern at night. So the more we can reduce the lantern effect to La Vista Grande, the better. I understand, like everyone else, you want this large view. I think Ms. Waller's comment about the location of this deck is very important. Our guidelines call for 15 feet back from the property line, even though you're outside of your setback. I think how you handle that area right here is really important for not only the privacy of your owner, but also for the adjacent neighbors. That's a privacy issue that, of course, we'd want to pay attention to. And I'm trying to look for, I think this is the elevation that faces the uphill property. I really would want to understand what those windows, what these windows are doing in terms of privacy. Not so much issue, but what can the neighbors see into here, and what can you see the other way? So a little bit further explanation, I think, is important here. Again, this glass element up here, maybe a little too much in terms of light element. You're capturing certainly the south light as it moves across towards the city. That's probably pretty important. That shows up over here. That's probably acceptable. But I think you really need to be careful about how you do this clear story around the top. I kind of understand the extent of the decks. That's why I was asking the question. The family that lives there now has a lot of deck area, as most of the folks, even showing from that aerial photograph, have in the entire neighborhood. Lots of folks have terraces and decks and lots of area. So I'm not as concerned on this site as I would be on some other sites about the size of the decks, given the vast expanse of property below it and the fact that it's all pretty much sheltered within this L shape. So I'm less concerned about that. I think that in rendering, I agree with my colleague, Ms. Bernstein, about if you can soften this area, the color, maybe a white house isn't the most appropriate color scheme for this home. And if you can figure out how to hold on to the contemporary architecture that you want to do, but I think soften the front street elevation would be probably pretty helpful in terms of compatibility with the general neighborhood. We've been in this neighborhood a lot because, as been pointed out, there's been other applications and other projects. There are a lot of hedges up here, a lot of hedges in the neighborhood. If one understands the new hedge height code, you are allowed an 8-foot hedge on your street property line, on the front property. On the side yards, you're allowed to go up to 12 feet with correct me, David, if I'm incorrect, with administrative approval for a 12-foot hedge between property lines as long as the adjacent owner agrees. I think we've had some cases where they've agreed to go higher. Obviously, there's some historical precedence by the fact that I think you explained the hedge down here on this side has already been that tall for many, many years. Certainly, a hedge up over here that could be regrown. I think you were suggesting hedging or some landscaping scheme that would allow that to go back to where it was, which appears to be at least 10 feet tall, or certainly higher than 8 feet. That might be appropriate, would certainly take care of the privacy issues on these windows that are indicated on your elevation. So I think if you look at that, that would be very, very important. One of the things that you might consider, and you know, one of the challenges we all have in doing, I'm trying to go back to your floor plan, in doing a single floor scheme, even though, yeah, there's a little piece tucked under the first floor, is if in fact you want that big volume, is to step down one of these spaces or both these spaces. Now, that's a bit of a challenge when we're trying to do, some of us are trying to do homes with aging in place. But, you know, maybe that's an opportunity if you want to hold on to that 13 or 15 feet, maybe you drop these two areas. That gets the thing pushed out. It still gets the volume you're looking at. It might push this deck down a little bit, but there might be some opportunity to study at least that piece versus, and I understand completely about the driveway. You can't really push this and get the driveway to work. And historically, I suspect that when this entire development was put in, the reason this house was at its elevation, which is what you're holding on to right now, is because of the street and the driveway. There's no other way to do this. It didn't have anything to do with view compatibility or anything else. It was the practicality of being able to get a driveway to a garage, given the house had to be set so many feet back from the street. So that, I suspect, forensically was why this house was set where it is. The other thing that I find quite interesting is a lot of the homes have these very low roof pitches, and in some ways they're almost flat.
Yeah.
They're almost there already, and particularly the house just above it where it has that big flat carport roof. So I'm less concerned about the issue of a flat roof. I'm obviously concerned about how it's detailed at the fascia edge, what the color is, how some of that can be broken up. You know, one of the, somebody's drawing. But you know, one of the challenges when you have a flat roof is, you know, can you use landscaping to lessen the impact on the street? The combination of landscaping and architecture is really the solution. It's not just architecture by itself, and it's not just landscaping. When we look at residential work, in my view, it's really a combination of landscaping, et cetera. So one of the things I'd like to see when you come back is a landscape plan. I'm sure my landscape colleague would like to see that also. What are you going to change? What are you going to keep? So if there's a lot of landscaping you're going to hold on to, that plan should indicate that. If you're going to change some, obviously you're going to change some landscaping out here. What is that going to look like? Are you going to hold on to landscaping that's in this front yard area? And if you're going to add to it, what does that look like? So that would be important. If the retaining walls or anything in here change, kind of understanding that will be fairly important. So let me go back and just double check my notes. I think the issues, I agree with a couple of comments from my colleagues. I think this project is approvable, but it needs some tweaking. It needs still need a little bit of work here, but I really do appreciate all the work you've put in it so far. I think you've, as somebody pointed out, you've been over backwards to try to really understand how this house fits in the context of the neighborhood. We don't see that too often. We have to fight that much more, so I really do appreciate that, but we've got a little ways to go yet before I think we get there. So those are my comments. So the chair would entertain a motion. This is here, I think, as I recall, for comments only. So it still needs an environmental assessment. So I think what would be most helpful to the applicant if we could summarize some of our thoughts.
Seaside Bar.
Yes, Ms. Pearson.
I'll give that a try here. So I'd like to make a motion with the following comment. That the board feels that the architect and owner have made impressive efforts to work with the neighborhood and showing our board the cross sections from many different view sheds. We also appreciate the style. Feel like that can be can work with the neighborhood. We would like to see.
Oh.
You pay heed to the roof color and the detail of the fascia. That you work to soften the look of the house with the landscape and the color choices of the house. That you reduce the lighthouse effect to the north on Vista Grande side. That you study lowering the possibilities of the finished floor for the highest level of the house, the 14.5 feet. What else? And you come back with a landscape plan, preliminary at this point. It's probably good. And showing existing landscape, what you intend to keep and what you intend to propose.
Thank you. That's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Is there further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So just a couple of my notes and see if you want to add any of this. Study the rear corner of the deck to comply with the 15-foot setbacks.
Yeah, the one on
Right.
the one side
the master
is
bedroom?
actually second story.
And you said, let's see, just add to the thing about the color and the landscaping. Would you like to add find ways to promote neighborhood compatibility with color, landscape, and architecture? So that maybe they'll tweak some of that front, is what I
think
thought.
she said that.
She didn't
Well, I
say
didn't-
architecture, she said landscape and color.
Whoa.
What do you mean by
Are
that?
you okay with the
What do you mean by
architecture?
that?
You do?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
He
she said
did?
she appreciated the architect.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But I agree, we need to include the
deck,
The deck.
off the master bedroom, complying with the 15-foot distance.
50-foot setback on the
Yeah.
It's
master
actually
bedroom
not,
deck.
it's not a setback, it's a guideline
It's a
distance.
guideline distance, right? It's not a
Don't get the
setback.
two confused.
That's right. It's
Okay.
not a legal setback.
Okay? So is that agreeable to the second?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Let's see, I had another thought before we go to vote. I suspect when you do come back, you'll be in a position to request for project design approval. So if that does occur at that meeting, more than likely, given what I'm hearing from my colleagues, you're going to be required to do a set of story polls. So typically the process at that point is we would not give you project design approval at that meeting. We may find other things, everything else may be perfectly fine if you've responded to our comments, but we wouldn't be able to give you that because we would want to have story polls put up before we gave you project design approval, because we want to see those. It'll be up to the board as to whether or not we want to make a collective trip, an official meeting trip to the site with the story polls, or whether we'll want to look at them individually. Just so the public knows, the story polls are put up under a certified survey. They are expensive. It's not a cheap action. The board has 3 levels of story polls we can ask for. That's in the guidelines. And then once they're up for a fairly short period of time. You'll be notified when they're up. Obviously, if you live in the neighborhood, you'll see it. But that would be the process should the board choose to require story polls. That's not an action we'll take tonight. an action we would consider at a subsequent meeting. Okay, so does everyone else understand the motion and action on the floor? Yes.
You're continuing to the full board? Right, okay.
Continuing to the full board.
I think there was one comment that you
Yes.
made about the lighthouse effect on the street side.
Yes.
That we probably should consider also.
I think you had that in, she had that in.
Lighthouse effect to the north on the histogram.
Okay.
That's where you want clear story windows is on the north.
Right? It's a challenge. Okay. Other comments? Further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, the chair shall call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay, so carried. We'll see you back here when you're ready.
So can you please just, I appreciate the comments on the story poles.
Yes.
Can you explain how that process is going to work then? So it's up to the board,
Yes.
but the board can't make that call right now?
We can't make that call right now because you need to see how you address these other comments. So should you come back to us and say, I want to lower the roof or I want to change it or whatever, once we get to that point and you get some agreement that the house is kind of set in terms of its volume and size, then at that point, the board would make a decision about whether or not to go to story poles.
Would that be prior to making I know it's not an approval, but a concept?
Yes, that would be prior to any project design approval motion. Yeah, we can't do that. If we choose to do story poles, then we're not able to give you project design approval until we see the story poles. We can't do the story poles until you come back to us to show us how you've addressed these issues.
Okay. And so if we address the issues and the board is kind of satisfied with the changes, then you can either give concept approval at that point or
request story poles, and then the concept approval would go to a subsequent meeting.
Understood. Okay.
Okay? All right. Mr. Ring, I understand item number 5406 North Ontario Road is held off.
That is correct. It's postponed.
Okay. Is there any other business before the board? Hearing none, the chair shall adjourn the Monday, October 5th, 2015 board meeting.